Chapter 8. It was still sunny in Huading in the morning, but the weather suddenly changed in the afternoon. Over the Sky Academy, the clear sky darkened at a very fast speed. The clouds were getting lower and lower, and the air began to become dull. The Sky Academy, which was originally very quiet because it was not the first day of school, also became even quieter. The rain poured down in buckets in the evening. Li Tianlan, who had dinner outside, was wandering around. The sudden heavy rain almost instantly drenched him. By the time he hurried back to the dormitory, his clothes had been completely soaked. This made Li Tianlan both distressed and annoyed. Although the clothes he was wearing looked ordinary, the price was not simple at all. Shirt, trousers, leather shoes, and underwear. Although Li Tianlan did not have any brand awareness, he clearly saw the price of these things when Qin Weibai bought them for him. They added up to nearly 50,000 renminbi, which was a fortune that could allow him to travel back and forth between Huading and the border countless times. Wearing them made him feel as if he was covered in banknotes from head to toe. Li Tianlan could not help but care about it. But now, he was completely soaked. So when he returned to the dormitory, he took off his clothes and washed them. Then, he put on the school uniform of the Sky Academy. Although it was called a school uniform, it was actually a very ordinary camouflage uniform, but the color was lighter than the camouflage uniform of the ordinary army. This thing was specially sent to him in the afternoon. There were 3 sets in total, and they were matched with 2 pairs of military boots. After changing into them, Li Tianlan moved about casually for a while and found that they fit him well. This also made his inner depression dissipate a lot. The rain outside the window was getting heavier. Li Tianlan's dormitory was on the top floor. Dense raindrops were beating on the roof, making a very lively sound. Li Tianlan, a country bumpkin who didn't even know how to plug in and turn on the TV, had nothing to do. Finally, he remembered the Sky Academy's student code of conduct on the table. The student code of conduct did not look thick, but that was compared with the weekly notebook on the desk. In fact, the student code of conduct was at least 100 pages thick, which showed that there were many things to pay attention to in the Sky Academy. Anyway, he had nothing to do, so he simply sat at the desk and opened the first page of the student code of conduct. 8 large scarlet characters immediately came into Li Tianlan's eyes. 8 words, almost up and down, neat and tidy. It became the only content on the page. If you want to go to heaven, you must first go to hell. What the hell is this? Li Tianlan was at a loss. Advice? Encouragement? Or was it the school motto? No matter what it was, just from the literal meaning of these 8 words, Li Tianlan knew that his study life in the Sky Academy might be crueler than he had imagined. Li Tianlan's heart was as calm as still water. He silently turned the page, and the contents of the student's code of conduct appeared on the second page. Chapter 1 of the Student Code of Conduct of the Sky Academy. Credit is omnipotent. Power, wealth, and deities were not omnipotent. Only academic credits were. In the Sky Academy, credits meant everything. In terms of confidentiality, the Sky Academy was definitely one of the military bases with the highest specifications in Jianghu state. Although it was named after the school, countless newly developed equipment, weapons, and defense systems of Jianghu state would be the first to be equipped with the Sky Academy. However, in addition to countless cutting-edge weapons and training bases on the island, there were also entertainment places for students, shopping malls, karaoke halls, and bars. What was even more exaggerated was that the Sky Academy even had a small playground. All these expenses did not require RMB, but credits. Here, RMB was useless. Credits were the only currency in circulation. Clothing, food, housing, and transportation, everything required credits. Similarly, the number of credits was also the only criterion to judge a student's performance. In the first month of school, new students would have 50 credits. However, none of these 50 credits could be used freely. Because even living in the dormitory was not free here. Living in the dormitory cost 1 credit a day, which meant 30 credits a month. In addition, taking the school bus back and forth from one training ground to another required 10 credits a month. The remaining 10 credits were used to buy a series of daily necessities, among which food occupied the majority. Because there was no canteen in the Sky Academy, there were only restaurants, and eating in restaurants also required credits. The amount of consumption was most directly related to what one ate. That was to say, if a student wanted to survive in the Sky Academy without any entertainment or other activities, he had to get at least 50 credits a month. Once the credits were negative and could not be made up within the prescribed time, then no matter who it was, he would directly lose the qualification to be a student, which was equivalent to being expelled. A student who was rejected by the Sky Academy basically lost his future. Credits were related to survival as well as future. The curriculum of the Sky Academy was a 3-year course, which was also a credit system. Within 3 years, any student, no matter how short his time in the school was, could graduate from the Sky Academy in advance as long as he had enough credits. 8,000 credits. This was the minimum number of credits needed for graduation in the Sky Academy. The graduation of the Sky Academy was divided into 3 levels: barely graduate, normal graduate, and perfect graduate. 8,000 credits could reach the level of barely graduate. A normal graduation would require 12,000 credits. And a perfect graduation required a total of 20,000 credits. Within 3 years, the students who accumulated the most credits among the perfect graduates had the qualification to create their own forces. The Sky Academy would directly report to the Ministry of National Defense and the Ministry of State Security. The forces created by the students were nominally under the leadership of the Ministry of State Security or the Ministry of National Defense, but in fact, they were free to develop and expand. Create their own forces. This was the most attractive thing about the Sky Academy and the Deep Sea Academy. This precious quota, which could only be produced every 3 years, was also Li Tianlan's goal in coming to the Sky Academy. But after reading the student code, he realized how difficult it was to achieve this goal. It was not easy to accumulate 20,000 credits to be a perfect graduate, not to mention to rank first among all the perfect graduates in terms of accumulated credits. There were various ways to earn credits in the Sky Academy. The most common way was to complete the daily courses and training tasks of the Sky Academy. As long as they reached the passing line, they could get a credit as a reward. If they failed, then double credits would be deducted. The training tasks would also be ranked, and the top 3 would get an extra credit as a reward. There were such tasks basically every day, but there were not too many. If they passed all the tasks, it was enough for the students to survive here, and they could even occasionally go to entertainment and relax. But it was obviously not feasible to accumulate at least 8,000 credits in 3 years. Therefore, in addition to the daily training tasks, there were also a large number of internal work tasks and field tasks within the Sky Academy. The so-called internal work was nothing more than doing odd jobs within the academy, such as mopping the floor, cleaning the toilet, organizing the library, and so on. In addition, the work of the senior sister who was responsible for the reception of the new students today and the senior brother who delivered the clothes to him today could also be regarded as internal work tasks. This kind of work could earn them about 1 or 2 credits a day. Obviously, the real experts did not care about this kind of task. They would only aim at the field tasks. But even the field tasks of the lowest difficulty were also risky. The Sky Academy would set different credit rewards for these tasks according to their difficulty. For example, the tasks of hunting down traitors, assassinating important figures of the enemy country, and going deep into the enemy's rear to fight obviously gave more credits than ordinary field tasks. The credit rewards were basically more than 100, and there were even tasks with hundreds of credits. This could be said to be the most rewarding task, but it was also extremely dangerous. The danger did not come from the enemy, but from the colleagues. The field task system of the 2 special warfare academies, the Deep Sea Academy and the Sky Academy, was shared. Therefore, when the students of the 2 academies carried out the field tasks, they would often collide. There was only one task, so the 2 sides were bound to compete. If there was competition, there would naturally be fighting. In many cases, the students of the 2 academies fought for credits, even more fiercely than when they fought against the enemy. There was a lot of introduction about credits in the student code of conduct, which occupied almost 1/3 of the content of the code. Li Tianlan's expression remained calm as he read the code page by page. Among the countless introductions to the tasks, there were 3 tasks with the highest credit rewards. The first one was the internal maneuver of the Sky Academy once a year. The maneuver began from the first stage to the end, spanning the whole year, and each stage had different credit rewards. Li Tianlan, who was expressionless, took a deep breath and finally put pen to paper. At the same time, amidst the violent rain, a figure carrying a suitcase appeared at the door of the first unit of the first block in Area A. This was an extremely burly young man in his 30s. He had short hair and a rough appearance. He was not wearing a raincoat or holding an umbrella. He stood silently at the entrance of the unit, ignoring the rain as if it was nothing. He only raised his head and stared at the top of the building with a pair of bull eyes. The glaring lightning flashed across the sky, and the light instantly made his face pale. He still stood silently, looking at the only room on the 6th floor with the light on, thoughtfully. I can't believe it. I'm a teacher of the Sky Academy. Damn it, how could I sneak over to test a freshman in the middle of the night? What's Sister Qin thinking? It's too shameful to tell others. This weekend, you have to keep it a secret from me, or my reputation will be ruined. The burly young man adjusted the headphones on his ears and said in a dry voice. He was at least 2 meters tall, and standing at the door made a strong impact, but his tone was full of reluctance. You've got no reputation at all. Hurry up and get to work. Don't waste time. And Jia, I personally suggest that you'd better be careful in this operation. You don't know the background of this freshman, but he's someone that Sister Qin pays attention to. How can he be simple? If you're defeated by this freshman, tisk, it'll be a big highlight. In the headphones, a playful laugh sounded, full of gloating. Bullshit, he's just a freshman. How strong can he be? He's just a rookie. Weekend, do you want to make a bet? And Jia sneered with a disdainful look. F***CKU. You also know that the target is a rookie freshman? You want to make a bet? You're really shameless. Hurry up and get to work. Sister Qin is so patient. If you can't do it quickly, hey. In the headphones, the man called Weekend chuckled. And Jia shook his head helplessly, sighed, carried his suitcase, and reluctantly walked into the door of the unit. At the same time, he muttered to himself, this job is really boring. It's so boring. His body was huge, but it was as light as a feather. There was not the slightest sound when he walked. His burly body seemed to be flashing in the corridor. In a few seconds, he had already reached the rooftop from the first floor. The rain on the rooftop was heavier, and the wind was stronger. The raindrops all over the sky hit in Jia's face. He just casually wiped his face, squatted on the ground, and opened the suitcase in his hand. There was a glass screen about 30 to 40 centimeters in size in the suitcase, and there was a red button below the screen. And Jia pressed the button without hesitation. Under the beating of the rain, the screen in the suitcase lit up without being affected at all. On the screen, a red figure was clearly reflected, and the figure seemed to be writing something on the desk. Good boy, you've started to keep a weekly diary so early? You're quite diligent. And Jia chuckled, opened a secret compartment in the suitcase, and pulled out a golden metal stick, which was about the same length and thickness as a chopstick. He pulled the metal stick with both hands, and the metal stick suddenly extended to dozens of centimeters long. Without hesitation, Jia came to the top of the red image and plunged the metal stick directly into the ground. The solid concrete roof was like tofu, and the metal stick was not hindered at all. It directly pierced into the roof made of concrete and went straight down until the tip of the stick disappeared. The screen in the suitcase flickered. In an instant, all the scenes in Li Tianlan's bedroom appeared on the screen. And Jia's smile had just appeared at the corner of his mouth when it suddenly froze in the next second. In the bedroom below, the rookie freshman, who should not have noticed any of his actions, suddenly raised his head almost at the moment when he plunged the metal stick into the rooftop. His eyes looked directly at the roof. In an instant, Jia felt his scalp go numb, and a chill spread directly from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. On the screen, the rookie freshman, who looked delicate and weak, had already stood up. His eyes, which had been calm and gentle a second ago, had changed completely in the twinkling of an eye. Those were supposed to be a pair of clear and soft eyes, but at this moment, there was an unparalleled demonic and piercingly cold look in them. And Jia had never seen such a demonic look before, but he subconsciously sensed great danger. It was the instinctive fear of death that any life had. There was no way to escape, no way out, and only despair. On the screen, a silver metal pipe, which was less than 10 centimeters long, slipped from the freshman's cuff and fell directly into his hand. The metal pipe was evenly thick and could be held firmly by hand. As Njia's pupils contracted, the freshman below suddenly swung his hand. The metal pipe in his hand suddenly extended, and a long spear more than 2 meters long appeared in his hand. In the bedroom, Li Tianlan's eyes became more and more demonic. He held the spear with one hand, aimed it at the roof, and thrust it straight at it without hesitation. Outside the window, it was raining heavily, and thunder suddenly rumbled. The spear in the room went straight through the sky. The silver spear pierced directly into the roof. With a loud bang, a big hole with a diameter of nearly 3 meters suddenly appeared on the thick roof. Rain fell from the hole, but a large piece of the roof, which was made of reinforced concrete, was broken into countless stones, which continued to shoot into the air. Li Tianlan's figure had already rushed out of the hole in the roof. His eyes were directly fixed on Njia, who was hiding on the rooftop in a panic. Without any nonsense, the silver spear smashed the rain all over the sky and directly smashed down. It happened almost at the same second. In Li Tianlan's bedroom, tiny but extremely dazzling electric arcs began to flash at the wardrobe. The air in the bedroom began to twist slightly in a shape visible to the naked eye. A mature, plump, and beautiful figure appeared directly in the flashing electric arcs. With just a slight step, she had already appeared beside the desk. She had been standing at the wardrobe in the bedroom for a long time, but Li Tianlan didn't notice her at all. The woman's fair and beautiful face was expressionless. She was as cold as an iceberg, and there was not the slightest warmth that a human should have in her eyes. From the inside to the outside, this woman exuded a chill that kept strangers away. She stretched out 2 fingers, pulled over Li Tianlan's weekly diary that was spread on the desk, and read it quietly. There were only a few hundred words written on the open weekly diary. Li Tianlan's handwriting was not beautiful, but every stroke was full of a kind of extremely sharp edge. On the whole, there was a kind of mysterious artistic conception. The woman's eyes were focused, and she carefully read Li Tianlan's weekly diary from beginning to end. Her expression did not change at all, but her pair of eyes, which made people feel cold at first glance, slightly narrowed. "How arrogant you are," the woman said to herself in a tone without any warmth. She sneered slightly and said, "I'd like to see what you can do." Her figure flashed. In the flashing electric arcs, her figure had disappeared directly from the bedroom. The weekly diary on the desk was pushed back to its original position by an invisible force, and it was still open. On the white page, the ink on the last few lines of Li Tianlan's words had not yet dried, and the sharpness between the lines was even stronger. What rises will eventually fall. What is beautiful will eventually be broken. Chapter 9. Run. The faster I run, the better. This was the only thought in Njia's mind. At this moment, the heavy rain, the deafening thunder, and the stones and steel bars that had been blown away on the rooftop had completely disappeared from his eyes. A 2-meter-long silver spear had completely occupied his mind. This was a long weapon with a rather domineering shape. The feature that it could shrink was obviously more convenient for its owner to carry. When it was not fully extended, it was just a metal tube of about 10 centimeters. But once it was fully extended, anyone would be amazed by its exquisite craftsmanship. The 2-meter-long spear body was completely extended from the handle of about 10 centimeters, but the thickness was almost exactly the same, which did not affect the feeling of holding it at all. What frightened Njia even more was the spearhead of the silver spear. The spearhead was slender and had no tassels. The 2 sharp spear blades spread outward in a subtle arc, giving people a ferocious and exquisite feeling. At first glance, it looked a bit like a halberd, but the arc of the two spear blades and the spearhead was obviously more restrained than that of a halberd. And Jia had never seen such a strange spear, but it definitely did not mean that he didn't know what it was. As a new teacher of the Sky Academy, with his professional vision, he could be sure at the first sight of this spear that it was a real murder weapon. It was more versatile than ordinary spears and more flexible than halberds. In modern society, although hot weapons had become the mainstream on the battlefield, cold weapons were the most trustworthy things in the hands of real experts. Hot weapons were indeed convenient to use, but bullets and cannons would always run out. Cold weapons, on the other hand, were different. As long as people were still alive, they could continue to kill the enemy. The moment he saw this spear, and Jia could totally imagine what kind of bloody storm this spear would set off on the fierce battlefield. He didn't even need to imagine at all, because at this moment, he was personally feeling the great pressure brought to him by this spear and its owner. The 2-meter-long spear smashed down from the sky. Wherever the spear passed, all the air seemed to be completely sucked out. The sharp whistling sound went from low to high. In Njia's sight, the ferocious and exquisite spear smashed directly at his head from top to bottom. No feeling could describe what he was feeling right now. As the long spear approached, it seemed that the whole world was collapsing. The pure and extreme killing intent enveloped all his movements. The raindrops in the air were directly torn into powder that was hard to be seen by the naked eye. In Njia's eyes, this spear seemed to have become one with the whole heaven and earth. With surging, crazy, pure killing intent, it was as if the heavenly power was falling endlessly. At this moment, Njia had no intention of resisting at all. He gathered all his essence, chi, and spirit, roared, and retreated directly. The silver spear smashed into the ground. The entire building shook violently. Countless cracks spread out in all directions on the flat rooftop with the spear as the center. Boom! Under Njia's dull gaze, the surrounding cracks spread to the limit. The rooftop seemed to be unable to withstand such a huge force at all. The initial landing point of the spear collapsed directly, forming a huge crack of 7 or 8 meters long. Li Tianlan, the culprit who caused all this, had no intention of stopping to ask questions. As soon as the long spear hit the ground, he rushed over without saying a word and thrust his spear forward. Was this really King freshman? Who taught this kind of person? And Jia burst into tears. Faced with Li Tianlan in this state, he didn't even have the courage to test his strength. Looking at the long spear that was about to pierce his chest in an instant, and Jia did not hesitate. He turned around, ran a few steps, and jumped directly from the rooftop. Behind him, Li Tianlan's eyes flickered, and the light in his eyes became more and more demonic. The moment Njia jumped from the rooftop, he sprinted a few steps without hesitation and jumped down directly with the long spear that was taller than him. The height of more than 10 meters was nothing to the two of them. The moment his feet landed on the ground, Njia bent his knees. After quickly unloading the force, he suddenly bounced up and fled desperately. There was a forest around the dormitory area that had a longer history than the Sky Academy. The terrain was more complicated. As long as he rushed in, Njia believed that he could easily escape with his advantage of being familiar with the terrain. But as soon as his body bounced up, the long spear behind him had arrived behind him again. Li Tianlan, who landed a second later than Njia, bore the force of the recoil after landing. Without any unloading process, he attacked again. His head, chest, and back. Li Tianlan struck 3 times with his spear, and all of them landed on the vital parts of the human body. His moves were clean and tidy, but each of his moves was filled with extreme gloomy violence. This was a real killing technique. And Jia, who was retreating, had no room to fight back at all. His body twisted in a weird way, and the bones all over his body suddenly cracked. At this moment, it seemed that all the bones in his body were completely dislocated. While running forward with his legs, his upper body suddenly tilted to a great extent. Without affecting his speed, he once again avoided Li Tianlan's spear. Li Tianlan finally uttered a short syllable. He seemed to be a little surprised. His eyes were still fixed, but the demonic look in them grew stronger and stronger. Compared with the bumpkin who had just arrived in Huading, Li Tianlan in this posture was strange and terrible. He was calm, awe-inspiring, indifferent, and sharp. His eyes, in particular, were overflowing with demonic qi, which made people feel cold at first glance. In a short while, the figure in front of him had fled dozens of meters away. Li Tianlan snorted and directly followed him without any intention of giving up. The movement of the opponent's body twisting in an instant was obviously beyond the scope of professional skills. It was more like some kind of secret unique skill of martial arts. He didn't know the opponent's identity, but it was hard for Li Tianlan to believe that the opponent had any good intentions since he appeared alone on his roof on a rainy night with the intention of monitoring him. If he had bad intentions, he was naturally an enemy. Before Qin Weibai left, she vaguely mentioned the treason case of that year and used the word confusing. There must be a lot of inside stories. At this time, Li Tianlan did not intend to show any mercy to a suspected enemy. The two rushed out of the dormitory area one after the other and rushed into the woods around the dormitory area. One chased and the other fled, and the distance of dozens of meters was quickly shortened. And Jia, who was desperately running away, felt cold inside. He knew that the opponent's speed was slightly faster than his, but he thought that as long as he entered the woods, he could easily escape from the opponent's pursuit with his familiarity with the terrain. But the fact was the opposite. After entering the woods, Li Tianlan's speed did not slow down. Instead, he was more like a fish in water. The dense trees and the bumpy ground did not affect him at all. The distance between the two was getting closer and closer. In a few seconds at most, he would enter the freshman's attack range again. With the 2-meter-long spear and the length of his arm, the opponent's attack range was a little terrifying. He couldn't continue to run like this. Time. He only needed to buy himself a few seconds to get rid of the opponent. A few seconds, and Jia, who was running at full speed, suddenly gritted his teeth and turned around. At the age of 31, he could become a teacher of the Sky Academy. Although he was not very experienced, it showed that he was by no means a weakling. Although he admitted that he was no match for Li Tianlan, and Jia felt that he could completely block him for a few seconds. He suddenly turned around and stopped moving. And Jia, who had been very close to him, was instantly approached. Li Tianlan was expressionless, but the killing intent in his heart was unprecedentedly firm. The silver spear stabbed straight. And Jia, who looked solemn as if he was facing a formidable enemy, no longer held back and attacked with all his strength. He jerked his hands in the air. In an instant, the rain falling in the woods seemed to all stop. Crack, the sound of something freezing rang out. An ice wall with a thickness of at least 1 meter suddenly appeared in front of Li Tianlan. The hot and humid air instantly became chilly. Li Tianlan's eyes became more and more demonic and cold. Although he could feel that the opponent was not weak from the speed of his escape, he found that he still underestimated the opponent. The void turned into an ice wall. This was not a special ability, but an expert in the ice-condensing realm of the 4 realms of martial arts. The ice wall was more than 1 meter thick. Although it was made with the help of the rain, Li Tianlan could completely conclude that the opponent's strength had definitely completely surpassed the qi-controlling realm and had completely stabilized in the ice-condensing realm. For most people, the 4 realms of martial arts were a mysterious realm of martial arts that they could only dream of. Even the qi-controlling realm, the most basic of the 4 realms of martial arts, was a high and mighty figure in the eyes of ordinary people. Condensing qi into a blade was the most basic sign of an expert in the qi-controlling realm. The qi here did not refer to things like internal force and qigong, but the air around the body. An expert in the qi-controlling realm could completely use the strength of his muscles and bones to compress the air in front of him to the extreme in an instant burst. The greater the strength and the faster the speed, the higher the degree of compression of the air. When a person's strength and speed broke through a certain limit, in an instant burst, his hands did not even need to attack the enemy, but the compressed air in front of his hands could hurt the enemy. This was condensing qi into a blade, also known as the qi-controlling realm. Compared with the qi-controlling realm, the ice-condensing realm was more advanced. As everyone knew, there was a small amount of water and steam in the air, and the strength and speed of an expert who had surpassed the chi-controlling realm had already reached a level that ordinary people could not fathom. Such an expert could completely condense all the water in the nearby air in an instant when he exerted his full strength. Condensing water into ice was the sign of the ice-condensing realm. Now the ice wall that suddenly appeared in front of Li Tianlan was more than 1 meter thick. Even with the help of the rain, it was not something that an expert who had just entered the ice-condensing realm could do. What a big move. Li Tianlan's tone was cold, and he finally spoke. As he spoke, he did not slow down his movements at all. Without any hesitation, the straight silver spear stabbed into the ice wall in front of him. Boom! The raging power vibrated wildly. The falling rainwater within 3 meters of Li Tianlan's body all rose in an instant. The ice wall in front of him, more than 1 meter thick, turned into ice cubes in the blink of an eye like tofu. Several thick trees inside the ice wall were directly broken into sawdust under the vibration of the huge force. Amid the sawdust and ice cubes all over the sky, Li Tianlan, who had also exerted his full strength, took a step forward and rushed toward Jia with the spear in his hand still in a stabbing position. The spear moved with the person, and the person moved with the spear. At this moment, Li Tianlan seemed to have become a part of the spear. With the violent killing intent that was enough to tear apart all obstacles, he rushed straight toward Jia. His target was still his heart. Irresistible and unstoppable. This was a kind of truly invincible momentum, invincible and invincible. Anyone or anything that dared to stand in its way would be torn to shreds by this spear in an instant. There was no leeway and no way out. This was Li Tianlan's martial arts, just like his life. And Jia, who had vowed to bet with his companions a few minutes ago and thought that Li Tianlan was a rookie, was scared out of his wits. Under this extremely terrifying spear, he could not even breathe, let alone dodge it. Help! He stared blankly at the spear that was getting closer and closer to him. He opened his mouth and finally let out a dying moan. The spear was about to pierce into Njia's chest. Stop! Bastard! An anxious and angry shout was heard, followed by the sound of a gunshot. The gunshot echoed in the dense forest. The bullet came from dozens of meters away and hit the back of Li Tianlan's hand directly. Li Tianlan felt a sharp pain in his palm, and blood splattered. Under the threat of death, he did not think at all. He directly threw out the spear that had condensed his peak killing intent. The spear, which was at least 2 meters long, flew out of his hand. In the forest, an extremely bright silver meteor flashed past and shot directly in the direction where the bullet came from. And Jia, who had been waiting for death, suddenly opened his eyes wide and roared, "Brother, be careful." In the forest dozens of meters away, a burly man, who was as strong as Jia, had no time to react. He could only watch the silver light getting closer and closer to him. The spear was like a dragon. The silver spear arrived in an instant, and the body of the spear directly penetrated the man's abdomen. Blood splattered. The silver spear carried the burly man's body and still shot forward without slowing down. Njia's eyes suddenly turned red. The spear thrown by Li Tianlan from dozens of meters away flew nearly 20 meters in the air with the brother he had been with day and night. In the end, the man and the spear were nailed to a thick tree. Half of the spear penetrated the tree and shook violently. The figure nailed to the tree by the spear was motionless, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. Njia's face was dull. There was no anger in his eyes, only deep sadness. Li Tianlan, who was empty-handed, wiped the blood on his hands expressionlessly. Then he narrowed his eyes at Njia and said softly, "You go to hell, too." Njia did not make a sound. The scene of Li Tianlan nailing another expert in the ice-condensing realm from dozens of meters away was like a nightmare in his heart. Similarly, it was seen by the 2 old men on a big tree dozens of meters away from Li Tianlan. They were Yu Donglai and Zhuang Huayang, the principal of the Sky Academy, who had come to watch a good show. The two came over in high spirits, but they saw a wonderful show that was absolutely not good to watch. What a strong momentum. This boy has probably vaguely touched the invincible realm. At the very least, it is quite possible for him to enter the thunder-shocking realm before the age of 30. Damn it, I've misjudged him. Old Zhuang, his aptitude is much better than Qin Ku's, isn't it? Yu Donglai was silent for a few seconds and sighed softly. He had regained his composure on the surface, but his heart was already full of stormy waves. He knew Li Tianlan's identity. Li Tianlan had such combat capability, but he had not yet entered the 4 realms of martial arts. Yu Donglai was sure that there was a special reason for this. How could such a person be a loser? He was simply a monster. Thinking of Li Tianlan's identity and the treason case that was still confusing and full of doubts, Yu Donglai's expression was complicated. With the appearance of this boy, the special warfare system of Zhongzhou state would probably be quite lively in the future, wouldn't it? Chapter 10. And Jia was not afraid of death. If he was afraid of death, it would have been impossible for him to enter the ice-condensing realm in his early 30s with ordinary aptitude. The 4 realms of martial arts could only be entered by those who were not talented or courageous. And Jia's strength was enough to prove his indomitable passion. So when he saw his brother nailed to the tree by a spear, there was no fear in Jia's heart, only endless sorrow. He didn't even hear Li Tianlan's words. He had subconsciously rushed in the direction of his sworn brother. The killing intent in Li Tianlan's eyes did not diminish. He suddenly reached out and grabbed Jia's neck. The killing intent in his heart surged wildly. He attacked with all his strength. If this claw really fell on Jia, the defenseless Jia would not even have a chance to struggle before he died. Li Tianlan did not move. He stretched out one hand with a cold and violent look. A thin and weak electric arc suddenly lit up in the blink of an eye. Li Tianlan closed one hand and directly tore off Jia's collar from behind. Jia's body was dragged forward 6 or 7 meters by a sudden force. Electric arcs flashed in the air. With Jia as the center, the rainwater within a radius of more than 10 meters shot in all directions. The raindrops were like swords, hitting the surrounding trees. 7 or 8 trees of different thicknesses fell in response. When the raindrops hit the trees, there was a smell of burning charcoal in the air. In Li Tianlan's sight, Jia's body was wrapped in a strong force and was still moving rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he had reached the side of the silver spear dozens of meters away. The air was obviously distorted, and the electric arcs flashed like lightning. The rain in the air poured down like a waterfall. Through the woods and the rain, Li Tianlan vaguely saw a plump and beautiful figure suddenly appear in the air surrounded by electric arcs behind Jia beside the long silver spear dozens of meters away. One of her hands was still holding Jia's arm tightly. A cold and gloomy gaze fell directly on Li Tianlan's face. Li Tianlan took a step forward subconsciously with a cold expression. The demonic sharpness in his eyes almost pierced through the rain and went straight into the other's eyes. The pupils of the woman who suddenly appeared and saved Jia's life suddenly contracted. Among the people present, she was probably the only one who noticed a detail that was easily overlooked. In a situation where she had already displayed her terrifying strength, the moment the new student saw her, his subconscious reaction was not to retreat, but to advance. Behind this intense aggressiveness was an eternally burning desire to fight and a will to attack. Swift and domineering strength, an aura that would rather die than retreat, and a will that was as hard as steel. Such a person was almost flawless in martial arts. No flaws meant invincibility. Could it be that he had already touched the invincible realm? A freshman who seemed to have touched the invincible realm before entering the 4 realms of martial arts? The woman took a deep breath, and her plump chest rippled in the rain, forming a seductive arc. She ignored Li Tianlan and began to check the condition of the subordinate who was nailed to the tree trunk by the silver spear. Sister Qin, quick, save Zhou Zhou. And Jia, who had been rescued from the brink of death, finally came to his senses and shouted excitedly. Don't worry, he won't die. Qin Ku said coldly and frowned slightly. Her seemingly delicate palm fell on the body of the silver spear, and she suddenly pulled out the silver spear that was nailed to Zhou Zhou's abdomen. A large amount of blood gushed out of Zhou Zhou's abdomen. The silver spear head was strange. When it was suddenly pulled out, an equally strange wound was left on his abdomen. The spear blade was dripping with blood and seemed to have cut off his intestines. There was a flash of killing intent in Qin Ke's eyes. Before she could speak, Jia had rushed over and sealed the penetrating wound on Zhou Zhou's abdomen with ice in his hands. "Take him to the hospital," Qin Ke ordered in a cold voice, but her eyes became a little serious. The moment the long spear was in her hand, her palms suddenly sank. The silver spear, which looked light, actually weighed at least 50 kilograms. It could be seen that the freshman not far away was much more powerful than she had imagined. "I didn't let them go. I'll see who dares to move." A soft and deep voice came. At a distance of tens of meters and through the heavy rain, Li Tianlan's voice seemed to ring in their ears. It was elegant and calm, with extreme danger and strangeness. And Jia, who had planned to leave with Zhou Zhou, suddenly froze. Qin Ke no longer concealed the killing intent and coldness in her tone. She said angrily, "Who do you think you are? How dare you be so domineering in front of me?" She raised her hand and suddenly exerted force. As the electric arc flashed, the silver spear that weighed more than 50 kilograms pierced through the night rain in the forest and rushed straight to Li Tianlan. And Jia quickly withdrew from the battlefield with his injured companion on his back. At the same time, Li Tianlan moved forward. Charge! In an instant, the raindrops falling from the sky all tilted toward Qin Ke with his charge. Li Tianlan's speed seemed to be faster than the silver spear. The distance of tens of meters was quickly shortened. His body and his silver spear seemed to have become a straight line in an instant. The man and the spear were about to collide. In Qin Ke's quickly focused eyes, Li Tianlan leaned his body and grabbed the long spear that almost brushed past his shoulder. The spear with Qin Ke's power desperately pulled his body backward. The blue veins on Li Tianlan's arms bulged, and the joints all over his body crackled under the impact of the huge force. But his eyes were calm and strange, like the abyss. He didn't retreat. He didn't retreat even half a step. Li Tianlan, who was holding the long spear tightly, suddenly jumped up. The heavy rain fell. His body rose. The long spear, more than 2 meters long, turned in Li Tianlan's hand and suddenly formed a natural arc. The blood-stained spear blade came with a high whistling sound. The calmness and strangeness in Li Tianlan's eyes faded, leaving only complete madness. He was a madman. A madman who was already invincible in the same realm. Qin Ke's mind was racing. Facing the long spear that was crazily chopping down, she just raised a white and slender palm. At the moment when the spear blade and the palm seemed to touch, Qin Ke suddenly flicked her fingers. Thunder suddenly sounded between heaven and earth. In the woods in the heavy rain, a bright electric light instantly bloomed between Qin Ke's fingers. The electric light was bright and dazzling, shooting straight into the sky. In an instant, the electric light seemed to be connected with the lightning between heaven and earth, piercing the ground from the sky. It was magnificent, running through heaven and earth, dazzling. Flicking thunder. The silver long spear was negligible in front of the electric light between Qin Ke's fingers, which seemed to connect heaven and earth. But the tip of the spear was still shaking wildly, desperately pressing down on Qin Ke's fingers. Qin Ke, who looked calm and cold, slightly raised her eyebrows and flicked her fingers again. The flesh and blood touched the spear blade, but the sound was like the sound of gold and iron colliding. In the harsh sound, Li Tianlan, who was still in the air, suddenly flew backward. His body hit a thick tree trunk, and he reached out to support himself on the trunk. With the help of the force, Li Tianlan's body rose again. The next second, he was already standing on a treetop that was shaking slightly with the wind and rain. His expression was still cold and condescending. The long spear, more than 2 meters long, was pointing diagonally at Qin Ke under the tree. Even though he was repelled by 2 flicks of the fingers, his body was still full of a kind of overwhelming aggressiveness and fighting intent. Thunder-shocking realm? Good move. Li Tianlan's body swayed with the treetop under his feet, but his arm holding the spear was terrifyingly stable. He narrowed his eyes and looked down at Qin Ku, chuckled, and said in a cold tone. As he spoke, his eyes, nostrils, and mouth, even his ears began to bleed. Even his ears began to bleed. 7 orifices were bleeding. In the blink of an eye, Li Tianlan had been seriously injured. Qin Ku lowered her head slightly and calmly rubbed a drop of blood off her fingertip. A drop of blood was all Li Tianlan had achieved just now. You're not bad. You have such strength before entering martial arts. When you enter the thunder-shocking realm, I'm afraid you'll be invincible under the invincible realm. Qin Ku raised her head and looked at Li Tianlan, who was bleeding from 7 orifices, and said indifferently. She was telling the truth. With Li Tianlan's strength before entering the 4 realms of martial arts, if he really rushed to the thunder-shocking realm in time, all the people in the same realm as him would be a joke. The potential of this freshman was so amazing that it made her a little flustered. All under the martial arts were non-entities. The correct interpretation of this sentence should be that all under the chi-controlling realm were non-entities. And she was an expert of the thunder-shocking realm. The thunder-shocking realm, which was second only to the invincible realm, was a rare super high-end combat capability for all countries in the world. Not to mention dealing with a non-entity who had never entered martial arts, even dealing with an expert of the ice-condensing realm or the fire-flaming realm was a piece of cake. But now, Li Tianlan, a freshman who had never entered martial arts, made her bleed tonight. What terrifying potential did he have? Although tonight's battle was not the same as a battle of life and death, and she didn't do her best for some special reasons, even so, Li Tianlan's potential was enough to frighten people. He might become the 3rd expert of the invincible realm in the decades since the founding of the Sky Academy. That would be the glory of the entire Sky Academy. Thinking of this, Qin Ku's eyes softened a little. I'm sure. Li Tianlan looked at Qin Ku coldly and said in a gloomy tone, if I enter the thunder-shocking realm, you won't even last a minute under my hands. So this is the reason why you came to kill me tonight? In order to pose a greater threat to you, are you going to kill me in advance? Qin Ku frowned slightly. She finally realized that something was wrong. Everything tonight seemed to have been misunderstood by Li Tianlan into a big misunderstanding. For her, everything tonight was just a freshman test, but in Li Tianlan's mind, it seemed to have become a vendetta. No wonder he was so ruthless. If she hadn't come in time, neither Zhou Zhou nor Jia would have survived tonight. Who wants to kill you? Do you have any enemies outside? Thinking that it was a misunderstanding, Qin Ku suddenly felt that it was necessary for her to explain clearly. It was a joke to let Li Tianlan, a freshman with infinite potential, mistakenly think that a teacher of the Sky Academy wanted to kill him. Li Tianlan's eyes suddenly narrowed. He looked calm on the surface, but the branch under his feet shook slightly. He lowered his head and slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. His movements were feminine, covering up the shock in his heart. I'm Qin Ku, the deputy director of the teaching office of the Sky Academy. Everything tonight is just a normal freshman test. I mean no harm. This is my work permit. It's up to you to believe it or not. Qin Ku glanced at Li Tianlan and said again. At the same time, she took out a certificate and threw it to Li Tianlan on the tree. Li Tianlan subconsciously took it and glanced at it. Suddenly, tens of thousands of horses galloped in his heart. It was not a vendetta caused by the exposure of his identity, but a so-called freshman test. So, I was seriously injured, and so was Zhou Zhou just now, just because of this test? Li Tianlan asked, staring at Qin Ku with the certificate in his hand. You overreacted. Li Tianlan, you must understand what kind of place the Sky Academy is. Here, no force can bribe a teacher to kill his students. This is the rule. Qin Ku said coldly. Li Tianlan was silent. Qin Ku's words really caught him off guard, and he needed time to digest them. After a while, Li Tianlan slowly said, for anyone who may threaten my survival, the only thing I can do is to kill them at all costs. My life is very important, so I have to stay alive. Director Qin, please convey my apologies to Mr. Zhou for what happened tonight. They were wild and unruly, and they were very vigilant. Qin directly came to these two conclusions. Until now, Li Tianlan still did not come down from the tree. Instead, he cautiously kept a distance from her, which showed that he did not fully trust her. Moreover, the explanation he gave was harsh enough. At least when Qin heard it, she felt a little uncomfortable. Your life is important, but are the lives of the teachers of the Sky Academy not important? Qin took another deep breath and said in a sarcastic tone. What does it have to do with me whether their lives are important or not? Li Tianlan lowered his eyes and said in a cold tone. You. Qin flew into a rage, but she forced herself to restrain herself. Indeed, Li Tianlan did not know Zhou Zhou at all. Zhou Zhou's life and death had nothing to do with him, but was that all? Li Tianlan cherished his life so much. If his brothers and comrades around him were also in a life and death crisis, what choice would he make? Qin took a deep look at Li Tianlan. This problem needed to be slowly observed in the next few years. Fortunately, there was still time. If there's nothing else, I should go back. Miss Qin, my bedroom is seriously damaged. If possible, I plan to apply for a new dormitory. Li Tianlan's tone became calm and gentle again. At this moment, he seemed to put on a harmless mask again. Make do with another room tonight, and I'll change it for you tomorrow. Qin said in a cold tone. The accommodation in the Sky Academy was still very abundant, so it was naturally not a problem to change dormitories. Thank you. Li Tianlan thanked her with a smile and reached out. The long spear pointed at Qin suddenly shrank into a metal tube more than 10 centimeters long and was put into his sleeve. Qin's eyes moved. She was obviously a little curious about this exquisite but extremely heavy long spear. She asked casually, what's the name of this spear? It's called Human Emperor. Li Tianlan glanced at Qin and replied in a gentle tone. Human Emperor? Qin raised her eyebrows, and her eyes instantly became extremely strange. Qin raised her eyebrows, and the look in her eyes instantly became extremely strange. Li Tianlan asked in confusion. Do you know the 12 murderous weapons of the Dark World? Do you know the 12 murderous weapons of the Dark World? Qin's expression became more and more strange. It had to be said that she was indeed an extremely beautiful woman. It was just that her usual expression was too cold. When she slightly revealed some human-like expression, it immediately made her charm rise by a few levels. However, after getting to know Qin Weibai, Li Tianlan already had a detached mentality that treated other beauties as fleeting clouds. His heart was as still as water. He shook his head casually and said, never heard of her. About 15 years ago, Night Spirit, a super force in the Dark World, went east to Jianghu State in order to snatch a top-secret blueprint of a military project. One of the two dominators of Night Spirit, Heaven Heart, an invincible realm expert, personally took action and started a massacre at the border of Jianghu State. A patriarch of a top noble family in Jianghu State went to fight. In the end, he killed Tian Xian, an invincible realm expert of Night Spirit, with one shot in the sky 20,000 meters away. Tian Xian was smashed to pieces, and no bones were left. Do you know what weapon that patriarch used? Qin asked slowly. Her tone was still cold and indifferent, yet her eyes were suffused with the color of fervor, and it was the adoration and respect towards absolute experts. Didn't you say it yourself? Shoot them with a gun. Li Tianlan was also shocked, but his tone was still steady. Yes, he used a gun, but it was different from your long spear. He used a sniper rifle. Coincidentally, that gun is also called Human Emperor, the first of the 12 murderous weapons of the Dark World. Such an outstanding person and such a famous gun are worthy of the name Human Emperor. As for you and your weapon. Qin paused and did not continue. Li Tianlan also fell silent, but the Human Emperor that he had put into his sleeve fell into his palm again, and he held it tightly. The heavy rain in the woods continued, and thunder rolled. Pale lightning tore through the sky. Chapter 11. As the official opening time approached, the campus of the Sky Academy gradually became lively. In fact, it was relatively lively. The campus of the Sky Academy was extremely large. It was dozens of kilometers in length from east to west and width from south to north. There were less than 3,000 teachers and students scattered on the vast land. It was not an exaggeration to say that the land was vast but sparsely populated. In the absence of unified action, the campus seemed empty most of the time. Fortunately, the dormitories in the school were relatively dense. All the teachers and students were gathered in one area. As more and more freshmen entered the school, the endless stream of freshmen directly added a lot of noisy atmosphere to the school at mealtime every day. This was almost a scene that Li Tianlan had never seen since he was a child. Except for seeing so many people at the station when he first arrived in Huading, this was the first time he had come into contact with such an environment. Different from the boring and numb border, this was facing the sea where spring was warm and flowers were blooming. Here, the sun was warm and the breeze was blowing. Here, the grass was like a carpet, the flowers were in full bloom, the smiles were bright, and the youth was flying. The competitive environment inside the Sky Academy was extremely cruel. But for Li Tianlan, everything here was like heaven. After a lifetime, peace and joy filled his heart most. It was the 6th day of school. For nearly a week, Li Tianlan would take a certain amount of time to go out and have a look every day. As a newcomer, he almost instinctively wanted to know more about this legendary special warfare school. Subconsciously, he liked the feeling of controlling everything and knowing everything. He didn't know what it would do for his future studies, but at least it wouldn't do any harm. Li Tianlan was meticulous and cautious. He had an almost pathological pursuit of details since he was a child. The only thing that Li Tianlan regretted was that he still didn't see his other 2 roommates on the day before the official opening of the school. The dormitory that Jianghu changed for him was still a structure of 3 bedrooms and 1 living room, but it was larger and more luxurious than the previous dormitory. Not only this dormitory, but in the dormitory area, the building where Li Tianlan lived seemed to be more glamorous than other residential buildings. Li Tianlan paid special attention to it. So far, less than 24 hours before the official opening of the school, he was the only resident in this building. This also made Li Tianlan a little annoyed. It was not because he was lonely, but from the time when the freshmen entered this building, he could clearly see that these freshmen who had not yet arrived were different from other people. At least their arrogance was extraordinary. How many of these students were easy to talk to? When this group of people gathered together, the whole building would probably be quite lively in the future. It was obvious that Jianghu was up to no good by arranging him here. The woman seemed to hate him. Standing in front of the window, Li Tianlan sorted out everything that had happened in the 6 days since he came to the Sky Academy. He shook his head helplessly and walked out of the bedroom, ready to go out for dinner. A familiar yet unfamiliar voice suddenly sounded at the door. Then there was the sound of the door being unlocked. Li Tianlan, who had just walked out of the bedroom, was stunned for a moment. In his sight, the security door of the dormitory opened, and a tall figure walked into the dormitory. That's right, it was a figure, or rather, a strand. Because this person was too skinny. He was at least 1.85 meters tall, but he didn't seem to have much meat on his body. His tall figure stood there, but he didn't look intimidating at all. Instead, he looked like a bamboo pole, giving people a feeling of weakness. He was dressed in black sportswear, which looked like an empty robe. A dark brown wooden box was slung on his back, but his back was so narrow that the long box was shaking. The young man with long hair and a somewhat decadent temperament was stunned when he saw Li Tianlan. Then, a smile appeared on his white and thin face. He took the initiative to reach out his hand and said enthusiastically, "Hello, I'm Li Baidian. I'm Li Tianlan." Li Tianlan reached out his hand and shook hands with him. The man's palm was the same as his body, full of bones. Li Tianlan? Oh, we're from the same family, brother. We have 2 characters in our names. To tell you the truth, at the beginning of this year, an old Daoist went to my house as a guest and said that I would meet a noble person around the Qingming festival. Damn, the Qingming festival, meet a noble person? At that time, I almost pulled out my sword and killed the whole family of that old bastard. Isn't that a curse? I believe it when I see you. Let's not talk about noble person first. Just based on your name, I know that we're destined to meet. I knew we were fated to meet. Hey, should I change my name? My name is Li Tianbai. If we go out like this, will people think that we're brothers? Forget it, the name Li Tianbai is too ugly. How domineering is Li Badian? What do you think? How about you change your name to Li Lantian? That's better. Li Badian grabbed Li Tianlan's hand and shook it hard. The smile on his thin face was bright and he talked non-stop. Li Tianlan's expression was stiff. It was the first time in his life that he had seen such a super familiar person. It was quite an eye-opener. However, this kind of familiar character was much easier to accept than the arrogant character he had expected. The corner of his mouth moved, and he laughed dryly. There's no need to change my name. Even if I don't change my name, we're destined to meet. Besides, Li Tianlan hesitated, but in the end, he couldn't turn a blind eye to such an obvious point. He directly complained, besides, if I change my name to Li Lantian, what kind of heaven will you worship? Well, that makes sense. Li Badian pondered for a while and nodded in agreement. If you change your name, I'll become a joke. Where's my room? Li Tianlan could barely keep up with this kind of jumping thinking. He pointed to the other 2 rooms and said, there are only the 2 of us here now. You can choose any of the other 2 rooms. Li Badian was really casual. He dragged his body, which was estimated to be about 50 kilograms at most, into the room closest to him. He put the long box on his back on the bed and threw away the weekly diary in his hand. Without even looking at the student code of conduct on the bed, he smiled casually and said, "Brother, want to have a meal together?" When I came here, I saw that there are many restaurants in this shabby place. You came earlier than me, do you have any good places to recommend? I'll treat you. If you want to go to a restaurant after school starts tomorrow, you'll have to pay credits. I won't be able to afford it then. I'll go to the nearest one. Li Tianlan's tone was calm. He was not particular about food. As long as there was meat, he was satisfied. The food in the cafeteria might be ordinary to others, but it was truly delicious to him. You don't know how to live. Li Badian rolled his eyes and took out his mobile phone. Wait a minute. I'll grab a girl and let's have a good meal together. I'll ask her to book a table first. 3 people, right? Do you have any friends? Li Tianlan suddenly thought of Yu Qinyan. Although he was related to Qin Weibai and Yu Donglai, he was not very familiar with Yu Qinyan. In the past 6 days, they only had a meal together. Now he should ask her to come. However, looking at the smiling bamboo in front of him, Li Tianlan was a little hesitant. If he asked Yu Qinyan to come, would he be like a lamb walking into a tiger's mouth? He shook his head subconsciously. Before he could speak, the burglary-proof door of the dormitory rang again. A young man, who looked about 22 or 23 years old, walked into the dormitory with a big bag. Compared with Li Badian, who was like a bamboo, his new roommate at least looked more reliable. He was of medium build, short hair, thick eyebrows, big eyes, and bronzed skin, looking very masculine. He was not handsome, but he was angular and had a very tough aura. What was more different from Li Tianlan and Li Badian was that he wore a dark green military uniform. His body was straight, and he stood there with a strong and iron-blooded aura. Li Tianlan nodded at him and took the initiative to say, "Hello, I'm Li Tianlan." The man in the military uniform nodded, his face cold. Hearing the voice, Li Badian walked out of his room and looked at his new roommate. He raised his eyebrows slightly and his eyes stopped at the badge on his shoulder. He smiled and said, "Not bad, brother. You're already a major at such a young age? You don't look older than me. Which army are you from?" Border Control Corps, Ning Qiancheng. The major was a man of few words. When he mentioned the Border Control Corps, his words were full of clear pride. Li Tianlan's eyes narrowed slightly. He lived at the border all year round and did not know much about the outside world. However, he knew something about the Border Control Corps. The full name of the Border Control Corps was the Border Praetorian Corps of Jianghu State. It was responsible for setting up defenses and guarding the borders of the entire Jianghu State. It had a total of nearly 600,000 soldiers and could be said to be the most elite large army in the entire Jianghu State. Its combat effectiveness was well deserved. Once a war broke out, the entire Border Control Corps would be the front line of the entire Jianghu State. The camp where he grew up was near the border between Jianghu State and Annan State. There was also a Border Control Corps station dozens of kilometers away from the camp. TSK. Impressive. A major of the Border Control Corps. You're very valuable. Which army are you from, brother? Li Beidian exclaimed and moved closer to Ning Qianxing, laughing. Thunderbolt Battalion, Deputy Battalion Commander of the Guards Camp. Ning Qianxing's tone was indifferent, but his pride was becoming more and more obvious. Someone close to Marshal Dongqing? Li Beidian froze for a moment. His mischievous expression finally disappeared and he asked solemnly. The Thunderbolt Battalion of the Border Control Corps was the army directly under the command of Marshal Dongqing Wudi, the commander of the Border Control Corps. The guards camp of the Thunderbolt Battalion was responsible for the safety of the senior officers of the Thunderbolt Battalion. Ning Qianxing was able to become the deputy battalion commander at such a young age. He was definitely Marshal Dongqing's confidant and also the young talent that the Marshal of Jianghu State valued the most. The total size of the Border Control Corps was nearly 600,000 people, and its combat force was nearly 550,000. They were stationed in the provinces at the border of Jianghu State and other countries. Its internal structure was complicated and it held great power. It was known as the Small Military Department. How could a young man who was favored by the commander of the Border Control Corps be ordinary? Yes. Ning Qianxing glanced at Li Beidian and his tone became more and more indifferent. Li Beidian raised his eyebrows slightly and seemed to be deep in thought. He muttered to himself, Border Control Corps, Ning Qianxing, Ning Qianxing. This name sounds familiar, Ning Qianxing raised his eyebrows slightly and looked at Li Beidian arrogantly. Oh right. Li Beidian suddenly slapped his head. Ning Qianxing of the Border Control Corps, Drunbility Cheng. Are you Drunbility Cheng? Drunbility Cheng, Li Tianlan, who was watching from the side, twitched the corner of his mouth and almost burst out laughing. Li Beidian ignored Ning Qianxing's almost spitting fire eyes. With an excited face, he chattered on, I've long heard of your name. You're Drunbility Cheng, aren't you? I heard that you love to show off and can do anything. People in Jianghu call you Drunbility Cheng or Brother Drunbility. I've heard a lot about you. Now that I've seen you today, you really live up to your reputation. Ning Qianxing was speechless. Live up to his reputation? What the hell did that mean? Was his performance just now very pretentious? How did this damned bamboo pole in front of him hear that damn nickname? Wasn't that nickname supposed to be something that only circulated in a small circle? Who are you? Ning Qianxing looked at Li Beidian with his teeth clenched. He wanted to skin him alive. Me? Oh, I'm Li Beidian. I don't think you've heard of me. Li Beidian patted Ning Qianxing's shoulder and greeted him casually. Come, Tianlan, let me introduce you. This is Drunbility Cheng, you can also call him Brother Drunbility. Brother Drunbility is famous for his skill in acting tough. Of course, his strength is also unfathomable. He's one of the top 10 experts of the younger generation, much stronger than me. I'm Ning Qianxing. The muscles at the corner of Major Ning's eyes twitched wildly. He was about to roar. This was Drunbility Cheng? What kind of bullshit introduction was that? Yes, Drunbility Cheng is the same. Brother Drunbility, stop acting tough. It's our first time meeting and I'm very reserved. I don't understand your profound artistic behavior. Li Beidian laughed and put his arm around Li Tianlan's shoulder. Hello, Major Ning. Li Tianlan smiled and extended his hand. His eyes were gentle and clear. He didn't mind treating a real soldier, especially one who dared to fight at the border with 120% respect. Hello, Tianlan. Hearing that Li Tianlan didn't call him Brother Drunbility, Ning Qianqing's expression relaxed and he had a good impression of him. He was really tired of hearing the name Drunbility Cheng. However, those who used to call him that were his friends and he couldn't turn against them. In his opinion, it was a dark history. Hey, Drunbility Cheng. You. Don't call me Drunbility Cheng. Okay, Brother Drunbility. Don't call me Brother Drunbility. I'm not your brother. Li Tianlan smiled and shook his head. He didn't move, but he felt his phone vibrate slightly in his pocket. He took out his phone and opened it. On the screen, a photo of him and Qin Weibai snuggling together and hooking fingers appeared. Li Tianlan's eyes softened instantly. On the screen, there was a message from Qin Weibai. It wasn't a text message, but a WeChat that seemed to Li Tianlan to be quite high-tech. I've arrived in Billy State. The air in Bruxelles is good and the sunset is beautiful. We should come and have a look together. Li Tianlan's eyes were gentle. His fingers tapped on the screen for a long time, but he didn't know what to reply. He suddenly found that Qin Weibai had changed her profile picture. Her profile picture used to be a vast expanse of white snow, pale and dazzling. Now, it had become a piece of white paper. Li Tianlan subconsciously enlarged Qin Weibai's profile picture. On the paper, there were 2 lines of light and graceful handwriting, like flowing clouds and flowing water. At this moment, Li Tianlan's mind was filled with the intoxicating look of Qin Weibai when she wrote these 2 lines. Who are you to me? Who are you to me? Li Tianlan took a deep breath. At this moment, he was in the Sky Academy, but his mind seemed to have flown to Billy State thousands of miles away, to the sunset in Bruxelles, the capital of Billy State. The sunset there was beautiful, but the beauty beside him was even more beautiful. It was a very strange and comfortable feeling. He held the phone and looked at Qin Weibai's new profile picture. For a moment, he was reluctant to put it down. Beside him, Li Baitian's incessant chatter was still ringing in his ears. It's okay not to call you Drunkard Cheng, but Drunkard Cheng, you even refuse to call me Brother Drunkard. It's hard for me to understand. Tell me, what should I call you? By the way, I heard that the officers of the Border Control Corps all have code names. Tell me, what's your code name? Beside Li Baidian, Ning Qianqing held his breath. He glanced at Li Tianlan calmly, who was holding the phone, and said calmly, my new code name is Man of Sacrifice. Drunkard Cheng, you're showing off again. Get lost. Chapter 12. Generally speaking, Li Tianlan was very satisfied with his 2 roommates. Li Baidian was always joking around. He could get along with anyone quickly without the slightest arrogance or reserve. Such a person was undoubtedly the easiest to get along with. Ning Qianqing, the major of the Border Control Corps who was described by Li Baidian as a pretentious habitual criminal, was a little arrogant, but his personal cultivation was very good and he was not a bad person. Sharing a room with such a roommate was a very comfortable thing. Before this, Li Tianlan was really worried that the Sky Academy would send him 2 arrogant playboys with strong backers. If so, he would have a headache. Even if he wanted to dominate the world and make the Li family return to the peak of Jianghu state, it did not mean that he wanted to dominate the Sky Academy. He just wanted the most precious graduation place. As for other times, Li Tianlan would rather keep a low profile and quietly earn credits. Even if he could not keep a low profile, it was also good to be kind to others and accumulate more connections. If the Sky Academy really sent him 2 arrogant playboys, the dormitory would be in chaos all day long. Li Tianlan could not keep a low profile even if he wanted to. Li Baidian and Ning Qianqing coming over was exactly what he wanted. Lunch was Li Baitian's treat. The 3 of them found a nice restaurant. Li Baidian pulled a pretty girl from his mobile phone's contact list. She was also a freshman of the Sky Academy. Her surname was Yi, and her name was Huayu. It was a very unique name. Yi Huayu's way of addressing Li Baidian was also shocking. She kept calling him young martial uncle with an extremely respectful manner. This made Li Tianlan even more certain that the dormitory building he lived in was extraordinary. Of his two roommates, one was a young talent favored by the commander of the Border Control Corps, and the other was some martial uncle. Their backgrounds were certainly not simple. Obviously, except for himself, those who could live in that dormitory building all had a powerful background. After lunch, Li Beidian put on the airs of a senior and righteously said that he wanted to visit his martial nephew Yi Huayu's dormitory. Ning Qianxing said that he wanted to visit some of his comrades. Li Tianlan returned to the dormitory alone, shut himself in his room, and began to meditate. The so-called meditation had many names, such as dhyana, vipassana, mindfulness, and meditation. The names were different, but the effects were exactly the same. The highest realm of meditation was to forget oneself and pursue absolute concentration. In martial arts, the importance of meditation was no less than the importance of increasing one's strength and speed. In fact, it might even be more important. The more powerful one was, the more they valued meditation. It was no exaggeration to say that meditation was a part of martial arts. Moreover, it was the core and the most important part. To freeze ice with a wave of one's hand, to ignite fire with a raise of one's hand, to snap thunder with a flick of one's finger. To achieve all of these, one's strength and speed had to reach a certain level, but at the same time, one needed to have an absolutely focused will. If one's will couldn't be focused, how could one explode with the strongest destructive power and combat strength with just strength alone? Both willpower and strength had their limits. Some people were stuck in the ice-condensing realm all their lives and could not enter the fire-flaming realm. It might be because their strength did not meet the requirements, or their willpower could not be concentrated enough. In martial arts, without concentrated willpower, it was impossible to enter the ice-condensing realm or the fire-flaming realm, let alone the mysterious invincible realm. A day passed quickly in meditation. At 3:00 in the morning, Li Tianlan opened his eyes and moved his body. Then, he lay on the bed and listened to the sound of waves beating on the shore outside the window, quietly waiting for dawn. A few hours later, the school officially started. At 6:00 in the morning, Li Tianlan, who had slept for less than 3 hours, was awakened by a knock on the door. Ning Qianxing's calm and somewhat arrogant voice sounded outside the door. "Tianlan, it's time to assemble. Get ready." Li Tianlan looked at the time and agreed. He put on his camouflage uniform, hurriedly washed his face in the bathroom provided in the bedroom, and then walked out of the room. At 6:40, all the freshmen of the Sky Academy had to assemble in the entrance square not far from the dormitory area, and then participate in the first entrance maneuver of the Sky Academy. The first one to pass the maneuver would be rewarded with 80 credits. This was written in the student code of the Sky Academy, and Li Tianlan naturally would not forget it. "Where's Tianlan?" "Zhucheng, wake Tianlan up quickly. It's time to assemble." Li Tianlan poured a glass of water in the living room. As soon as he took a sip, Li Beidian's hurried voice sounded from the porch. With the sound of the door closing, Li Beidian's figure directly appeared in the living room. "You didn't come back last night?" Li Tianlan and Ning Qianxing asked in unison. The freshman girls of the Sky Academy are too enthusiastic. "I fought all night, how could I have time to come back?" Li Beidian chuckled. His skinny face, which was no less than a skeleton, had an expression of reminiscence and indescribable wretchedness. "Skinny, who the hell are you?" The girls of the Sky Academy are all proud and arrogant. Which one of them is ignorant? It's not easy for you to sleep with them whenever you want to. Ning Ziyuan narrowed his eyes and looked at Li Beidian with a playful expression. "Of course they fell in love with my handsomeness. It's human nature for men and women to love each other." Li Beidian tidied up the empty clothes on his body and said with a proud expression. "Bullshit. Handsomeness and handsomeness? Those women might as well find a cucumber." Ning Qianxing's face was full of sarcasm. "How can a cucumber be compared to me? I'm a cannon, okay? I shot to fame. How can a cold cucumber be compared to my cannon? Shot to fame? Cannon? I think you hit the nail on the head. Look at you, you're like a bamboo pole. How can you be compared to a cannon? Needles are more like embroidery needles. Pretentious Cheng. I'll fight you to the death. Li Tianlan rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. He smiled bitterly and said, Okay, there's no time for you to fight. It's time to go. Li Beidian and Ning Qianqing snorted at the same time. The former wrapped his skinny hand around Li Tianlan and scolded him indirectly. Tianlan, you have to listen to me. It's not enough for a man to just be pretentious. Yesterday, I inspected the girls' dormitory and found that the quality of the girls this year is quite good. Come with me another day and I'll introduce you to a few. I guarantee you'll be comfortable. Ning Qianqing clenched his teeth and glared at Li Beidian without saying a word. Li Tianlan shook his head and said casually, mediocre. I'm not interested. As he said this, the dreamy figure that was now in Bruxelles appeared in his mind again. What was that woman, who seemed real and illusory at the same time, doing now? Li Beidian wanted to say more, but Ning Qianqing said impatiently, Are you going or not? It'll be too late if you don't leave now. Do you think the school bus will wait for you? Go. Li Beidian laughed. The three of them went out together, got on the school bus and went straight to the entrance square. At this time, the open square was already densely packed with countless freshmen, all dressed in camouflage uniforms, lined up in a very neat phalanx on the square. Li Tianlan and his two roommates arrived at the square at the same time and stood at the back of the crowd. Right in front of the square was an exquisite rostrum. At this time, a row of tables and chairs had been placed on the 3-meter-high rostrum. Several school leaders were already in place. They sat in their seats and chatted casually with their colleagues. Tianlan, do you see that? The one sitting in the middle is the headmaster of the Sky Academy, Zhuang Huayang. He's one of the top 10 experts in Jianghu State. Standing beside Li Tianlan, Li Beidian quickly pointed at the rostrum and took the initiative to introduce him. Li Tianlan nodded and glanced at the rostrum with a calm expression. Zhuang Huayang was close to 70 years of age, but he looked unusually young, like a middle-aged man less than 50 years old. He had a gentle and elegant temperament, like a senior scholar, and did not look like a master at all. Top 10 experts in Jianghu State. Li Tianlan was lost in thought. Our marshal is also one of the top 10 experts, and his ranking is one place higher than that of Headmaster Zhuang. Ning Qianqing stood on Li Tianlan's right and said with a cold face. Li Beidian seemed to dislike Ning Qianqing and said mercilessly, Why don't you say 10 years ago? 10 years ago, your marshal was not on the list. A real man doesn't boast about his past achievements. Ning Qianqing snorted. Li Beidian shook his head and patted Li Tianlan on the shoulder. Ignore this pretentious guy. Look at the old lady in red on the left of the headmaster. She's the director of teaching of the Sky Academy, Guyunxia. People call her the old witch in Jianghu. She has a strong background and is a ruthless person. Don't offend her. Li Tianlan nodded again. The beauty on the right of the headmaster is the headmaster's granddaughter. She takes her mother's surname and is called Qin Ku. She's the deputy director of teaching and also a famous top genius in Jianghu State. She's one of the youngest thunder-shocking realm experts. Isn't she fierce? Mediocre. Li Tianlan looked disdainful. Li Beidian was silent for a while and then glared at Ning Qianqing. Then he turned his head and said seriously, Stay away from pretentious town in the future. Look, it's only been a day and you're already pretentious. Ahem, a clear cough suddenly sounded from the rostrum in front of them. There was no sound or microphone. The seemingly casual cough came clearly from the air and vibrated in all directions, as if it was ringing in everyone's ears. All the freshmen under the rostrum suddenly stopped talking. An old lady dressed in red had left her seat and was standing on the rostrum at some point in time. She was about 50 years old and had a short stature. However, her entire body exuded a sharp and fierce aura. Her figure was ordinary and even a little shriveled. Her face also had some natural wrinkles from the passage of time. She stood on the rostrum and glanced around with a cold gaze. Everyone immediately straightened their bodies subconsciously. Hello, students. I'm Gu Yunxia, the director of teaching of the Sky Academy. Gu Yunxia seemed to be very satisfied with the reaction of the freshmen under the rostrum. She raised the corner of her mouth and revealed a smile. But because of her appearance, her smile looked unusually mean and bitter. Li Tianlan quietly looked at Gu Yunxia, who was being carried up. From the first time he saw her, he disliked the director of teaching of the Sky Academy. It was not because of her ugly appearance and skinny figure, but because of an inexplicable feeling. Li Tianlan always felt that Director Gu was too cold, like a poisonous snake, and was not a kind person. Now when he saw her somewhat twisted smile, he felt even more disgusted in his heart. First of all, welcome to the Sky Academy. I hope that from the first day you enter the school, you can take this place as your pride and glory. On the rostrum, Gu Yunxia's voice spread to the whole audience and could be heard clearly. The Sky Academy is the earliest special warfare academy in Jianghu State and the most legendary special warfare academy in Jianghu State. Over the past decades, the Sky Academy has produced hundreds of generals, countless senior agents, and several giants of the dark world. The glory of this special warfare academy may not be known to all, but its influence is everywhere. It has the power to influence the pattern of the imperial special warfare system and the ability to change the fate of every freshman. Gu Yunxia paused and her smile faded. She continued, I can't know all of you, but I know where you come from. Some of you come from the military, some are the elites of the special warfare system, and some are the inheritors of various sects among the people. There are iron-blooded soldiers, excellent agents, children of generals, and commoners. But I can tell you for sure that no matter where you come from, you will gain something when you come to the Sky Academy. Every teacher of the Sky Academy is willing to do their best to help you and make you the backbone of the Imperial Special Warfare System. Here is the best growing environment and the cruelest competitive atmosphere. From today on, in the next 3 years, you will constantly encounter the test of blood, pain, and even death. The Sky Academy is a place of the strong, not a place for the weak to survive. So, please remember the motto of the Sky Academy, go forward with indomitable will. Tell me, are you afraid of death? After a short silence, a tsunami of voices suddenly broke out on the entrance square, neat and uniform, shaking the sky. Go forward with indomitable will. Everyone tried their best to roar these 4 words. Everyone's face was red and their blood was boiling. It was not because of Gu Yunxia's admonition, but because of the motto of the Sky Academy. It was because of these 4 words. Go forward with indomitable will. These 4 words were the true portrayal of the Sky Academy for decades. Countless thrilling stories and countless legends who turned the tide added innumerable glory to the Special Warfare Academy. Some people roared and went forward with indomitable will to die. Some people laughed wildly and fought to the death without retreating. Some people silently went forward with indomitable will to protect. The history of the Sky Academy's development was paved with the blood and flesh of heroes, so it was glorious and radiant. Very good. On the rostrum, Gu Yunxia nodded and said with a smile, I'm willing to go with you all the way. I hope you all become the pillars of the country, the pride of the Sky Academy and the entire Jianghu State Special Warfare System, not a shame. The audience was quiet again. Only Gu Yunxia's excited and shrill voice echoed in the square. The Sky Academy has been established for decades and has countless honors, but there is only one shame. Here, I want to mention a name that disgusts me and everyone. Behind Gu Yunxia, the other school leaders' expressions changed obviously. Headmaster Zhuang Huayang also lowered his eyes. His name is Li Kuangtu. Gu Yunxia looked around and her tone became sharper and harsher. The shame of Jianghu State, the shame of the Sky Academy. Perhaps many students have heard of the name of this traitor. He used to be the most dazzling genius of Jianghu State and entered the invincible realm at the age of 35. But when everyone was optimistic about him, this damn traitor chose to betray. He colluded with the Night Spirit organization and betrayed Jianghu State, which directly led to the annihilation of the 120,000 most elite troops of Jianghu State. Such a scum, it's simply intolerable that he doesn't die. And this bastard who betrayed Jianghu state is a graduate of the Sky Academy. He shamed the whole academy and made everyone feel disgusted. Even if he dies, he can't atone for his sins. This kind of trash that even wild dogs don't want to look at has covered nearly half of the glory of the Sky Academy. He died miserably, but he deserved it. But his disgusting and shameless behavior should be engraved on the pillar of shame of the Sky Academy forever to warn all the latecomers. Because of such a bastard, our Sky Academy has been unable to lift our heads for many years. Bastard, scum, trash, bastard. At the opening ceremony of the Sky Academy, the appearance of these words was simply unbearable to look at. But almost all the freshmen ignored Gu Yunxia's words, and the crowd was agitated. Damn Li Kuangtu. No, it's too easy for him to die. The 120,000 troops were annihilated. Is it enough for him to die? The national strength of Jianghu state has declined in recent years because there are too many such bastards. Li Kuangtu, I wish you can't rest in peace after your death. May your whole family die, damn it. It seemed that every corner of the square was echoing with curses. Gu Yunxia stood on the rostrum, squinting, but there was a trace of cold mockery in the depths of her eyes. In the whole square, perhaps only Li Tianlan's behavior was different from others. Others were either silent or cursing. But Li Tianlan was laughing. He was laughing silently, but the corners of his mouth were curling up. His body was trembling, and so was the corner of his mouth. Everyone could see how humiliated and indignant he was under his smile. But he was still laughing, laughing with all his strength. No one knew that it was Li Kuangtu, who was being cursed by everyone. The traitor who had been dead for many years. It was his father. A trace of red blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. Li Tianlan gritted his teeth and took a deep look at Gu Yunxia on the rostrum. He silently lowered his head and wiped the blood from the corners of his mouth. However, in his heart, there was a clear voice rumbling incessantly agitated. Wait and see. Chapter 13. Li Beidian was the first to notice Li Tianlan's abnormality. Recovering from his thoughts, he turned his head and subconsciously glanced at Li Tianlan, just in time to see Li Tianlan lowering his head and wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth. Li Beidian was shocked and frowned. He asked in a deep voice, Tianlan, what's wrong? Are you hurt? Although he didn't know Li Tianlan's specific origin, he knew the origin of most of the freshmen here. The atmosphere of competition inside the Sky Academy was fierce, but it was also not easy to get a place to study here. The freshmen sent by the military, the Special Warfare Group, the Secret Service Agency, and the martial arts sect were all selected after many rounds of selection. Many selections were fought from the beginning to the end, and the winner was king. Some people obviously won the final victory, but because they were too seriously injured, they missed the entrance time of the Sky Academy. These people were undoubtedly the unluckiest. There were also some people who could barely get up, but they came to the Sky Academy with serious injuries. These people were not very lucky, because the first day of registration was the beginning of the first maneuver. How good could they get with serious injuries? One step behind could lead to the situation of falling behind step by step. If Li Tianlan was in such a situation, it was simply terrible. It's a small problem. It doesn't matter. Li Tianlan rubbed the corner of his mouth hard, suppressed all the negative emotions in his heart, and tightly pursed his lips with a smile. Of course, his injury did not come from the internal competition, but from the fight with Jianghu on the first day of the school. In the following days, he had stabilized his injury, but because of the agitation just now, the serious injury showed signs of relapse. Thinking, Li Tianlan subconsciously glanced at the rostrum again. This time, he looked at Jianghu. But to his surprise, Jianghu was also looking at him. Their eyes met in the air. Li Tianlan's expression was calm. Jianghu frowned slightly, and her eyes were cold. Li Tianlan smiled at the rostrum, then withdrew his gaze and said slowly, "Don't worry, I will definitely get a good ranking. You two also have to work hard." "I see." Li Beidian thought for a moment and said decisively, when the maneuver starts, I'll be in front, Tianlan in the middle, and Braggart Ching in the back. Tianlan, try to reduce your physical consumption. We'll rush to the top 10 together. In the Sky Academy, every student attached great importance to the ranking of any maneuver. The ranking was related to the number of credits and the treatment one would receive. It was something that was worth fighting for. The ranking of the first maneuver after entering the academy could determine their starting point in the academy, so it was extremely important. If they could make it to the top 10 in such a maneuver, they would definitely attract the close attention of the higher-ups of the academy. Top 10? Ning Qianxing raised his brows in surprise and looked at Li Beidian. What? You don't have confidence? With your reputation as the city of acting tough, you have the nerve to say that you can't enter the top 10? Even if you want to show off, you should at least say that you can get into the top 3, right? Li Beidian said with a provocative look. As expected, Ning Qianxing began to show off. He glared at Li Tianlan and snorted. Of course I have confidence. I can take Tianlan to the top 10 without you. I'm worried about you. Look at your physique, you can push aside with a little force. Don't drag us down. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. He suddenly thought of the scene when Li Beidian introduced Ning Qianxing to him when they first met. He automatically ignored the introduction of Ning Qianxing's skill in showing off. What impressed him most was that Li Beidian introduced Ning Qianxing as one of the top 10 experts of the young generation. The top 10 experts of the young generation might become the top 10 experts of Zhongzhou State many years later. Such a young talent was outstanding in both potential and strength. As long as he was not too unlucky, it was absolutely no problem for him to rush to the top 10. Don't worry, as long as you don't drag us down. It's a deal. The three of us will act together and make it to the top 10 together. Li Beidian chuckled and patted his chest. His palms hit his bones through a layer of skin, making popping sounds. Neither Li Beidian nor Ning Qianxing seemed to leave the seriously injured Li Tianlan behind. They might not see eye to eye with each other, but between the lines, they both meant to take Li Tianlan to the top 10 together. It was impossible for Li Tianlan not to be touched. No matter how vigilant he would not turn a blind eye to such obvious kindness. They were just roommates who had been together for a day. In the competitive atmosphere of the Sky Academy, the two of them were willing to take a burden like him with them. Their broad-mindedness alone was enough to make Li Tianlan look at them with new eyes. Thank you, both of you. Li Tianlan looked at the two standing on his left and right and thanked them sincerely. Ning Qianxing snorted proudly. He raised his head and resumed his aloof look. Li Beidian laughed and waved his hand. It's what I should do. In the next few years, we will be roommates who get along with each other day and night. Our relationship is even closer than that of biological brothers. In a place like this, we will have to go on missions together in the future. That is a real life and death commitment. How can we not share our hearts? Only fools without foresight would be stupid enough to compete with their roommates. You see, Drunkard Cheng is a wise man. In the military camp at the border, the feelings of living together are even deeper than here. If you are not willing to share your heart with your classmates who will be studying with you day and night, who else can you count on? No matter what, I still have to thank you. Li Tianlan's tone was sincere. If people respected him, he would respect them tenfold. Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing were so loyal to him that he was willing to treat them sincerely. However, I think it's better for me to be at the front later. It's just a minor injury. It won't affect anything. In the process of competing with each other, the frontmost position would definitely face the most pressure. Once his human emperor was fully extended, it would be a spear more than 2 meters long. When he brandished the spear, he could better deal with the pressure coming from the front. His choice to be at the front showed that he was willing to trust Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing and even tried to trust his back to them. Tianlan, what realm are you in now? Ning Qianxing and Li Beidian looked at each other and the former suddenly asked. What about you? Li Tianlan asked back. Realm was something that could not be faked, but his actual combat strength was far beyond his realm. He wanted to be at the front. He could not tell Ning Qiansheng, one of the top 10 young experts, that he had not entered the 4 realms of martial arts, could he? I am at the peak of the ice-condensing realm and can enter the fire-flaming realm at any time. Ning Qiansheng said slowly. The corner of Li Tianlan's eye twitched subconsciously. Ning Qiansheng was 23 years old and about to enter the fire-flaming realm. With such strength, he was indeed worthy of being one of the top 10 young experts. I'm about the same as drunkard Cheng. I shouldn't be much worse than him. Li Beidian also said with a calm and confident look on his face. Ning Qiansheng was stunned for a moment. He took a deep look at Li Beidian and did not say anything. I'm about the same as you. I shouldn't be much worse than you. Li Tianlan said very modestly. His words were almost the same as Li Beidian's, with only a few words changed. The corner of Ning Qiansheng's mouth twitched a few times. He felt a pain in the ass. Li Beidian was about the same, so was Li Tianlan. He was ranked 5th among the top 10 young experts. Was the title of the top 10 experts so worthless now? Ahem, everyone. On the rostrum, a gentle voice suddenly interrupted all the voices below the stage. The headmaster of the Sky Academy, Zhuang Huayang, stood in front of Gu Yunxia with a kind expression. All the voices below the stage suddenly disappeared. Every freshman raised their head and looked up at the headmaster standing on the rostrum with reverence. After all, he was one of the top 10 contemporary experts in Jianghu State, who represented the top combat strength of their country. Such a status was much higher than that of Gu Yunxia, the director of teaching. What's your ranking among the top 10 contemporary experts? Li Tianlan tugged at Li Beidian's clothes and asked in a low voice. 7th. Li Beidian quickly said, the top 10 contemporary experts are ranked every 10 years. 10 years ago, the headmaster was originally ranked 5th. Over the years, he has been getting older and his state has declined a lot. Li Tianlan nodded with understanding. As time went by, the body would deteriorate. No matter how strong an expert was, his combat strength would continue to decline. This was the law of nature and could not be changed. A hero was past his prime, while a beauty had white hair. This was the most helpless thing. Everyone. On the rostrum, Zhuang Huayang stood straight. He glanced around and continued, I heard a lot of cursing, insulting, and even cursing the traitors on the stage. All of you are the future pillars of our country. I understand your hatred for the traitors. But I also want to remind you that cursing and cursing cannot show that you are very patriotic. No words can express our love for our country. Patriotism requires practical actions. Only voices without actions are nationalistic. Don't you think so? The audience became even more silent. Standing behind Zhuang Huayang, Gu Yunxia's face changed slightly. I've been the headmaster of the Sky Academy for nearly 20 years. I came here after the case of treason happened. Over the years, I've sent away many graduates of the Sky Academy one after another. I've seen them bring honor to the Sky Academy and the special warfare system of Jianghu State. I've seen their blood and bodies fall on the road to the strength of our country. This is the pride of the Sky Academy and Jianghu State. Zhuang Huayang's voice was low and gentle, but with an unquestionable majesty. Yes, I admit that the treason case was indeed a stain on the Sky Academy, even a shame. But shame can't cover up our glory. The treason case has long been a thing of the past. What's the point of saying more? But the Sky Academy still has a future, a better future. Each of us should look forward, because you can't change the past, but you can shape a better future. You will become the backbone of the special warfare system of Jianghu State in the future. Many of you may not be known, but the Sky Academy will remember you and remember any honor you bring to the Sky Academy. We hide in the dark and serve the light. I sincerely hope that each of you can go out from here and make the Sky Academy more brilliant because of you in the future, in the near or far future. The deafening applause sounded like thunder. Only Gu Yunxia's face was extremely ugly and she looked extremely embarrassed. Headmaster Zhuang didn't say much, but to a large extent, he denied her extremely fierce speech just now, which was tantamount to a slap in the face. Under the stage, some people were also applauding thoughtfully. Just now, Director Gu and Headmaster Zhuang's speech was, to put it simply, a speech with a slightly different content. But to put it broadly, this might be the different opinions represented by the two big forces. In this way, many people who knew the pattern of the special warfare system of Jianghu State suddenly smiled meaningfully. The special warfare system of Jianghu State, a great change was coming? Chapter 14. In the warm applause, Zhuang Huayang's expression remained unchanged. He pressed his hands down slightly and still smiled gently. He didn't seem to notice Gu Yunxia's embarrassed face behind him, nor did he notice the subtle and weird atmosphere on the rostrum. When the applause subsided, he continued, "Next is the time for the maneuver." His eyes wandered around the whole square and paused quietly in the last row. Then he said flatly, "I'd like to remind you again that the first maneuver after entering the school is very important. It may be related to your final achievements in the Sky Academy. So, please do your best and strive for the best ranking. I'll talk about the content of the maneuver." Zhuang Huayang pointed to the south and said, "There is a large maze less than 2 kilometers south of you. Through the maze, you will see a forest. Go all the way east from the forest. The teachers and I will wait for you by a pool on the edge of the forest. I will bring a school bus with 50 seats. The first 50 students to arrive will directly become my students. I will be responsible for each of my students until the next maneuver." There was an uproar. The huge sound wave swept the whole place in an instant. Although most of the freshmen had a general understanding of the content and results of the first entrance maneuver, there was still a great sensation among the freshmen when they heard what Zhuang Huayang said. The first 50 students to arrive would become Zhuang Huayang students. This basically meant that the classes of other schools would be assigned. The first 50 students would be the classes led by the headmaster, Zhuang Huayang. These 50 students might not necessarily have the greatest achievements in the future, but they could be said to be the most outstanding 50 students among the freshmen at this stage. These people were either powerful, intelligent, or extremely lucky. Everyone had their redeeming qualities. And it was certain that a large part of the perfect graduates 3 years later would come from the classes led by Zhuang Huayang. The Sky Academy held an internal maneuver every 3 months, and Zhuang Huayang's class would always be fixed at a round number of 50 students. In each maneuver, he would only choose the top 50 students. If the students in the top 50 this time fell behind in the next maneuver, they would also lose the qualification to be taught by Zhuang Huayang and would be transferred to other classes. However, it was undeniable that if they entered Zhuang Huayang's class from the first entrance maneuver, they would definitely have a lot more advantages than those in other classes. As one of the top 10 experts in Jianghu State, Zhuang Huayang's teaching was more valuable than that of other classes. Moreover, the other teachers in charge of this class were also the best teachers in the Sky Academy. It was no exaggeration to say that this class of 50 people would be the core group of the entire Sky Academy. Although the internal maneuver of the Sky Academy once every 3 months gave other classes a chance to rush into the core class, the longer the time, the greater the advantage of the members of the core class, and the smaller the chance for students from other classes to rush in. If they could rush in at the beginning, no one would be willing to fall behind. The sounds of discussion grew louder and louder, and the eyes of every new student became incomparably fiery. Zhuang Huayang's voice still came from the rostrum and spread throughout the audience. The next 5 hours will be a drill. After 5 hours, the drill will be over. If you don't arrive at the designated place, 50 credits will be deducted. The first to arrive at the designated place will be rewarded with 80 credits. The second to the 10th place will be rewarded with 50 credits. The 11th to the 50th place will be rewarded with 30 credits. There will be no reward or penalty for those who are ranked below the 50th place. Students can form teams spontaneously, but the number of people cannot exceed 10. After entering the maze, you will not get any supplies, but you can move freely, obstruct, and attack other students except yourself. The Sky Academy has only one requirement, that is, no killing is allowed in the entrance maneuver. Do you understand? Yes. The response of the freshmen below the rostrum was still loud, but this time, everyone's expression was different. Damn it, this old guy is really ruthless. He only said that no killing is allowed, so is it not against the rules to cut off the other's arms and legs? Li Beidian touched his nose and muttered to himself in the last row of freshmen. Li Tianlan smiled, and his eyes were thoughtful. He had to admit that there was a lot of information in Zhuang Huayang's words. Not to mention the vagueness of the only requirement that Li Beidian complained about, nor the temptation of the core class and the credit reward, just the sentence that they could move freely, obstruct, and attack other students except themselves was enough to make people vigilant. Zhuang Huayang was telling them clearly that in the cruel competition, no one but themselves was worthy of trust. Sinister. Ning Qianxing took a deep breath and said coldly, "This is clearly to make us kill each other and be on guard against each other." In this kind of environment, no matter how brilliant the elites cultivated are, they are still loners who dare not trust their companions and don't understand teamwork. Even if they can play a certain role after graduation, it will be extremely limited. But similarly, a team that can trust each other in this kind of environment is the most tacit and reliable team, Li Tianlan said with a smile. He narrowed his eyes and looked at the expressions of Ning Qianxing and Li Beidian. His eyes were deep and bottomless. "Are you two still willing to go together?" "Of course, I'll go with you." Ning Qianxing did not even think and spoke without hesitation. "Me too." Li Beidian said with a smile, "With our strength, we will definitely fight for the top 10. "Then let's go." Li Tianlan said with a smile. When he was very young, Li Honghe had told him that people should not be easily trusted, but they should also be trusted. For people in the dark world, it took a lot of courage to trust others. 70% boldness and 30% cautiousness. Li Tianlan had always been extremely cautious. But now, facing Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing, he had a very strong intuition that as long as he could really trust them, they would never let him down. Li Beidian nodded and raised his eyes to glance at the rostrum. He found that Zhuang Huayang, who was standing on the rostrum just now, had disappeared. Not only Zhuang Huayang, but Gu Yunxia, Qin Ku, and some leaders on the rostrum had also disappeared. Obviously, the maneuver had entered the countdown stage before anyone officially announced the start of the maneuver. A bunch of bastards. Li Beidian cursed angrily, "Let's go, let's go." The square formation of freshmen on the square began to disperse, but the whole group was always moving south. Li Tianlan and the other two, who were originally standing in the last row, became the front row of the square formation. In the crowd less than 10 meters behind Li Tianlan, separated by several rows of students, a pair of extremely dazzling girls were walking forward unhurriedly. A fragrant wind floated around them. No matter how hurried the freshmen who walked past them were, they would subconsciously take a few more glances when passing by them. They were a pair of girls about 18 or 19 years old. They looked light and exquisite, but their temperament was completely opposite. The girl on the right had delicate features. Although she wasn't a stunning beauty, she was extremely elegant and refined. She had the gentleness and cleverness of a pretty daughter from a humble family. She blinked her eyes and curiously sized up the crowd around her. Her eyes were clear and bright. "Sister Yuatong, let's hurry up." The beautiful girl took her companion's arm and said in a clear voice. "In this kind of maneuver, the faster we walk, the earlier we can arrive. Qing Yan, do you know the maze ahead? I heard that Senior Yu and Headmaster Zhuang are very close. Did Senior Yu tell you anything specifically?" The girl who was called Sister Yuatong asked with a smile. Even in the most critical eyes, the girl named Yuatong was an almost perfect stunner, or rather, a monster. She was undoubtedly beautiful to the extreme. This kind of beauty was ostentatious and presumptuous, with an extremely strong aggressiveness. Every casual move of hers was able to firmly grab everyone's attention. Her temperament was very pure, but there was a very faint but not negligible enchanting charm in it. She walked forward unhurriedly, like an elf, but more like a goblin. Imperceptibly, she seemed to have become the center of the nearby world. At this moment, the smile on her perfect face was light. Not to mention the other students nearby, even Yu Qinyan, who was a woman, was a little dazzled. "Sister Yuatong, you are so beautiful." Yu Qinyan grasped Wang Yuedong's arm and subconsciously praised. Little flatterer, don't change the subject. Wang Yuetong pursed her lips and smiled. She patted Yu Qinyan's head and became more lively. No, I didn't. Yu Qinyan shook her head honestly and said quietly, Grandpa didn't say much to me. He said that I should observe more and learn more. She paused and didn't go on. In fact, Yu Donglai also told her to contact Brother Li more in the future. But this sentence had nothing to do with the maze in front of them. Wang Yuedong's eyes were sparkling, and she became more enchanting and even enchanting. She said, then you should observe carefully. Do you think this maneuver is very simple? Look, the more you walk in the front and enter the maze first, the worse the result is likely to be. So don't worry, it's best for us to enter the maze at the end. Ah. Yu Qinyan looked at Wang Yuetong blankly and adorably. Wang Yuetong smiled without saying a word and continued to move forward. Her beautiful eyes casually glanced at the group of people walking in the front, who might also be the most unlucky. A figure as thin as a bamboo pole suddenly came into Wang Yuetong's eyes. Wang Yuetong froze for a moment and looked at it very seriously. Then she looked at the people beside the bamboo pole. In her sight, the three people seemed to be walking in the front of the crowd. The bamboo pole stood on the left, and another familiar figure stood on the right. Between the two, a figure who didn't look outstanding and tall walked slowly and firmly. Hey! It's Brother Li. Yu Qinyan looked in the direction of Wang Yuetong and suddenly smiled in surprise. Brother Li? Do you know him? Wang Yuetong remained calm and chuckled. Yes, Brother Li, Grandpa asked me to keep in touch with him. Sister Yuetong, do you know him too? Yu Qinyan nodded and said innocently. I don't know him, but I know the two people beside him. Brother Li doesn't look simple since he can make 2 of the top 10 experts of the young generation walk willingly on his left and right sides. Wang Yuedong's smile became more and more obvious, and 2 clear dimples appeared on her cheeks. She was as beautiful as the most beautiful scenery in the Sky Academy. Let's go and have a look. Wang Yuetong pulled Yu Qinyan's hand and quickened her pace. The distance between them was getting closer and closer. Li Baitian's exaggerated laughter sounded in her ears, sounding extremely heroic. Who dares to stop me? I'll cut off his head with my sword. Tianlan, what weapon do you use? Unarmed? Or you don't have a suitable weapon? I'll give you one. Don't stand on ceremony. Tell me, what do you like? Pretentious Qing uses a sword. I also use a sword. Why don't you use a sword too? 3 swordsmen, aren't they fierce? 3B** cheese, aren't they even fiercer? Ha 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 ha. Wang Yuedong's expression was strange. Yu Qinyan looked at the bamboo pole in front of her with some astonishment. Li Tianlan's gentle and indifferent voice sounded in front of her. I have my own weapon. What weapon? Show me. Li Baidian asked casually, don't hide it. Anyway, you'll show it later. Show me your weapon. The corner of Wang Yuedong's beautiful mouth twitched, and she subconsciously gritted her teeth. I'm not hiding it. I just put it away so that I can carry it. Li Tianlan said with a smile. He shook his arm, and a silver metal pole appeared directly in his hand. Under Wang Yuedong's curious gaze, Li Tianlan waved one hand. There seemed to be wind and thunder roaring in the air. The metal pole, which was perfectly grasped by one hand, suddenly stretched out, pierced the air in front of it, and turned into a silver spear more than 2 meters long. The sharp blades on both sides of the spear had expanded to the left and right sides. The whole spear was flowing with silver light, looking extremely mighty and domineering. Wang Yuedong's limpid eyes were full of extraordinary splendor. Not only her, but all the freshmen who saw this scene nearby also had their eyes lit up. Damn it! Li Baidian, who observed this big guy at a close distance, was silent for a few seconds. Then he said with an exaggerated face, Tianlan, is this your big halberd? Chapter 15. A distance of 2 or 3 kilometers was not far for ordinary people, not to mention the elite freshmen of the Sky Academy. The freshmen in the entrance square became more and more scattered. In less than 10 minutes, they were close to the maze mentioned by Headmaster Zhuang Huayang. At the entrance of the maze, there seemed to be only a few narrow doors for people to enter and exit, but the left and right sides of the whole building were constantly expanding in opposite directions. In a trance, there was a kind of majestic atmosphere that one could not see the end of at a glance. Looking at it this way, the whole maze seemed to be a very standard triangle. What a big triangle! The plan is quite standard. Standing at the entrance of the maze, Li Beidian looked at the maze in front of him and said with a face full of admiration. No, it shouldn't be a triangle. If it was a triangle, there would be a lot of corridors to design inside. It would cost a lot of money and be easy to design. It would be suitable for an amusement park. How could the maze of the Sky Academy be so low-level and simple? Li Tianlan said calmly after carefully observing for a while. He had seen a maze of a similar scale in another place, which was even bigger than the one in front of him. In that damn place, it took him a whole year to barely figure out the overall structure of the maze, and its complexity could be described as crazy. Now, when he saw the maze of the Sky Academy, Li Tianlan suddenly felt very familiar. If his guess was correct, then the maze in front of him was very likely to be a replica of the maze he had seen before. If that was the case, then this maze was not a triangle at all, but a diamond that could deceive everyone's vision. The diamond maze was more complicated than the triangle maze. If one tried to walk through the diamond maze in the form of the triangle maze, it was very likely that he would enter a fork when he was closest to the exit, and then he would go around and around until he returned to the entrance again. Now, when he saw this thing at first sight, Li Tianlan suddenly touched some memories that he did not want to remember, and he felt a headache. So, from the moment we stood here, we should have been deceived. Behind the triangle in front of us, there should be another triangle. When combined, it is diamond? Ning Qianxing raised his eyebrows in surprise. He came from the Border Praetorian Corps. As the large-scale comprehensive corps with the most terrifying combat capability in Jianghu State, the Border Praetorian Corps would send its elites to the Sky Academy or the Deep Sea Academy every year. However, the Sky Academy was a 3-year academy, and it was only responsible for educating one batch of students in 3 years. The content of each batch's entrance maneuver was different. There was even a super entrance maneuver where the first place was awarded 300 credits. Although the maze was difficult, the seniors who had experienced it would not take it to heart and warned their junior brothers and sisters to pay attention to what to do in the maze. At the end of the day, this was just a labyrinth. They would be able to get out of it sooner or later. The most dangerous thing was still the competitors within the labyrinth. Li Tianlan nodded. Before he could speak, a sweet voice sounded directly behind him. Yes, it's a diamond. Li Tianlan subconsciously turned around and looked behind him. Wang Yuetong and Yu Qingyan stepped forward and stopped in front of Li Tianlan. Senior brother, you've been to the Sky Academy before? How do you know that this maze is rhombus-shaped? Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan with her bright crystal-like eyes and asked softly. She stood quietly in front of Li Tianlan. Her ponytail swayed gently, her body fragrance wafted, and her voice was soft. She exuded a kind of pure but extremely enchanting charm. She was simply an enchantress. Ning Qianxing's expression was strange. He wanted to say something but stopped on second thought. Li Beidian looked at Wang Yuetong dumbfoundedly and swallowed hard. He could not hide the fire in his heart at all. This woman, no, this girl, was really too exquisite. Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly. A strong look of appreciation flashed in his eyes, and then he became calm again. I've never been to the Sky Academy, and this is the first time I've seen this maze. His tone was very gentle, but his eyes turned to Yu Qingyan without any reluctance. He said with a smile, Qingyan, is this your new roommate? Yes. Yu Qingyan nodded obediently and smiled kindly. Brotherly, this is Sister Yuetong, Wang Yuetong. Ahem, as soon as Yu Qingyan's voice fell, Li Beidian coughed violently. He wiped the saliva from the corner of his mouth awkwardly, and the fiery desire in his eyes quickly began to fade. Yuetong, why are you here? Ning Qianxing finally spoke. Whether it was in his tone or in his eyes, there was an unconcealable surprise. I'm here to study. Brother Qianxing, how is Uncle Ning? Wang Yuetong giggled. Her eyes sparkled, and her dimples appeared. Her whole body carried a kind of indescribable temptation and enchantment. Not bad. Is Uncle Wang in good health? Ning Qianxing seemed to not dare to look at Wang Yuetong at all and looked away. My dad is also fine. He just met Uncle Ning in Jinling some time ago. Uncle Ning said that he hasn't seen you for more than 2 years. Wang Yuetong blinked her eyes. Ning Qianxing did not say a word and pretended not to hear anything. Wang Yuetong did not talk about this topic. She said a few words casually, and her bright eyes rested on Li Tianlan again. She moved her feet and circled around Li Tianlan several times, not hiding her interest in Li Tianlan at all. Li Tianlan did not feel anything, but Ning Qianxing and Li Beidian were so nervous that their bodies straightened and cold sweat broke out on their foreheads. Li Tianlan was puzzled. Just as he was about to speak, Wang Yuetong stopped and took the initiative to reach out to him. She said with a smile, "What's your name, senior brother?" "My name is Wang Yuetong. I'm Li Tianlan." Li Tianlan reached out and shook hands with Wang Yuetong. The girl's palm was indescribably smooth and slender, and her fingers were slender. He let go of her without batting an eyelid and introduced, "This is my other roommate, Li Beidian." Wang Yuetong glanced at the bamboo pole, who was covered in cold sweat, and said with a playful expression, "Your name is Li Beidian?" "Yes, I'm Li Beidian, Duke Yuetong, just call me by my name." Wang Yuetong waved her small hand and directly interrupted Li Beidian's words. All her interest seemed to be in Li Tianlan. She glanced at Li Tianlan again and suddenly smiled. "Senior brother Tianlan, where are you from?" "My ancestral home is Yuzhou, and I grew up in Nanyun province." Li Tianlan was polite and courteous, but he was highly alert in his heart. He did not know everything about the outside world, but it did not mean that he was stupid. A woman like Wang Yuetong was qualified to bring disaster to a country and people wherever she was. She stopped here for a while. And many freshmen around her stopped, intentionally or unintentionally. Except for the battle with Qin Ke when he first entered the school, Li Tianlan thought that his performance was not out of line. He was low-key and mediocre, and he hid it well. In this way, it was absolutely not a good thing for a girl like Wang Yuetong to suddenly show affection to him. Moreover, judging from the attitude of Li Beidian and Ning Qianxing toward Wang Yuetong, it was enough to show that they had a powerful background. Li Tianlan did not want to get in touch with such people at all. The more he got in touch with such people, the more likely it was that his real identity would be exposed. The consequences of exposing his identity were what Li Tianlan could not afford now. Before entering the thunder-shocking realm, at least before entering the fire-flaming realm, Li Tianlan's trump card to protect himself was too limited, so he had to be careful. "Nanyun, the scenery is beautiful, but it's too warm." "No, senior brother Tianlan, have you ever been to Beijiang?" Wang Yuetong looked at Li Tianlan curiously, her beautiful big eyes blinking like the most expensive doll. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat. His expression did not change, but a trace of killing intent was brewing in his heart. What did she know? Just because of the maze in front of him? "No, I haven't been there," Li Tianlan said in a flat tone. He nodded at Yu Qinyan and said, "Qinyan, we're going in. Do you want to go with us?" Yu Qinyan blushed slightly. Thinking of her grandfather's instructions, she suddenly felt a little tempted. But looking at Wang Yuetong standing aside, she shook her head subconsciously and said, "I want to go with Sister Yuetong." "You want to go with me, and also with your brother Li, right?" Wang Yuetong looked at Yu Qinyan with a smile and reached out to pull her to her side. She said to Li Tianlan, "Senior brother Tianlan, there are only 3 of you, and we are 2 weak girls. Why don't we team up?" Li Tianlan frowned slightly, but he could not refuse. He turned his head to look at his two unusually silent roommates and said, "What do you think?" "It's up to you." Ning Qianxing was a little absent-minded and said subconsciously. Then he realized that he had said something wrong and quickly corrected himself, "It's up to me." Wang Yuetong narrowed her eyes subconsciously, and her heart suddenly trembled. "It's up to you. It's up to me." It's too obvious that the two sentences are trying to cover up something. Could it be that Brother Qianxing really came to be someone's lackey? What makes people even more speechless is that senior brother Tianlan in front of them obviously has not figured out the situation. "It's up to me too," Li Beidian said simply. "Then let's go together." Li Tianlan said calmly, "It's just that we are not familiar with the maze. If we affect Yuedong's ranking, I hope you won't blame us." "Of course not. If we follow senior brother Tianlan, we will definitely get through the maze as soon as possible." Wang Yuetong smiled sweetly, but there was some meaning in her eyes. Sure enough, she was still testing him. Li Tianlan turned around silently, his eyes cold. This female classmate, who seemed to have a powerful background, seemed to really start to have doubts. To some extent, her suspicion was indeed right. Judging from the appearance alone, he had seen this maze before, and it was in Beijiang province. That was the first time he walked out of Li's village, out of the primeval forest, and went to the endless desert. Li Tianlan breathed softly and took the lead to walk into the maze. The five of them turned around the first narrow path of 7 or 8 meters in the maze. After turning a corner, the road of the maze suddenly appeared in front of them. What appeared in front of them were more than a dozen intersections. The road made of the same blue bricks was 3 meters wide, spreading deep into the maze. This road went left, this road went right, this road went forward, the same road, but the direction was completely different. In front of more than a dozen intersections, countless freshmen went in and out. Some went in from the intersections, and some came back from the depths of the road. There was a lot of shouting and cursing. What the hell is this? These people are already confused at the very beginning of the road? Li Beidian looked incredulous. Wang Yuetong, who had been paying close attention to Li Tianlan's expression, also found that he was also shocked. But what did such a shock mean? She approached Li Tianlan quietly and said softly, "Senior brother Tianlan, how should we go?" "Whatever." Li Tianlan said casually, but his heart was full of emotions. The same. Almost all the same. The maze in front of them was based on the maze in Beijiang. Both the outside and the inside were the same, exactly the same. Under such circumstances, if Li Tianlan went all out, it would even take him less than 10 minutes to get out of this maze. Because he knew which way was the right way. Which way was misleading. "Go here." Li Tianlan suddenly pointed to an intersection and said calmly. Wang Yuetong suddenly froze. She said subconsciously, "Here?" If this road was right, it would be infinitely close to the exit in the end, but it would eventually go around to this position. This was a typical detour, and a super detour. "It's here." Li Tianlan looked at Wang Yuetong and said softly, "Yuetong, is there a problem?" He naturally knew that this road was wrong, but he also wanted to dispel Wang Yuetong's suspicion of him. In the current situation, getting out of the maze as soon as possible was not the most important thing. The most important thing was not to let Wang Yuetong suspect anything. So in this maze, he had decided to go as far as possible. "No." Wang Yuetong immediately came to her senses and said with a sweet smile. "Okay, we'll go wherever you want." "I'll go with you." Li Beidian laughed and put his skinny palm on Li Tianlan's shoulder casually, but he suddenly pushed Li Tianlan forward, as if he was deliberately pushing Li Tianlan forward. Li Tianlan's heart skipped a beat and he did not resist this force. He followed Li Beidian and quickly took a few steps forward, keeping a distance from Wang Yuetong behind him. Ning Qianxing followed without hesitation. Yu Qinyan and Wang Yuetong also followed. In a short time, this weird team of 5 seemed to have established its core. At the forefront, Li Beidian put his hand on Li Tianlan's shoulder and almost dragged him forward. The two took the lead and turned into an intersection. Li Baitian's voice sounded directly in Li Tianlan's ear, as if he was afraid of being heard. Tianlan, you'd better stay away from Wang Yuetong. Never, ever provoke her. Otherwise, even if the three of us were to join forces, we wouldn't be a match for him. Even if we brought out our backers, it wouldn't be enough. In the Sky Academy, there are not many people that I can't provoke, and even fewer people that pretending Cheng and I can't provoke. But Wang Yuetong is definitely one of them. Li Tianlan paused, glanced at Li Badian, and whispered, "What's her background?" Li Tianlan looked solemn. He took a deep look at Li Tianlan and said in a deep voice, "Princess Yuetong, the Wang Siren." He paused and continued, "She ranks 7th among the top 10 experts of the young generation." 7th? Li Tianlan raised his eyebrows slightly and took Li Badian into a dead end at random. Li Badian nodded and was about to speak when he suddenly froze. He opened his mouth wide and looked at the front as if he had seen a ghost in the daytime. For a moment, he was dumbfounded. Li Tianlan was also stunned. In front of them was a black brick wall, the most common thing in the maze, blocking all the way forward. But in the corner of the wall, two people stood motionless. One was an old man and the other was a young man and a woman. The man, who looked gentle like a middle-aged scholar, was looking at Li Badian and Li Tianlan with a smile and said in a gentle tone, "Two students, what do you mean by 7th? Beside the middle-aged scholar, a beautiful woman full of maturity and indifference was looking at Li Tianlan and Li Badian coldly. Patter, you're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.